He's lived and died 99 times, each death more brutal than the last. But no matter how many times the world ends, one thing never changes. His daughter, Dami. Min Seok was just a normal man before the outbreak. Now he's humanity's most experienced survivor, the only man who's faced the apocalypse 100 different ways. Every reset teaches him something new, how the virus spreads, how the monsters think, how people break when fear takes over. He's seen it all and lost it all, but this time is different. This time, he refuses to fail. With Dami in his arms, he joins a group of soldiers hiding inside an A-Mart, led by Captain Hyeri, a woman hardened by loss, but still holding on to hope. When a horde breaks through the barricades, everyone else panics, but Min Seok doesn't. He's done this before, and with nothing but a road roller and sheer determination, he crushes hundreds of zombies, saving them all. The soldiers start to whisper, maybe this man isn't ordinary. As they move toward Gupabal Station, the truth of this apocalypse grows darker. Through every nightmare, Min Seok carries only one goal: protect Dami, no matter what. Because for him, survival isn't about living forever. It's about keeping the promise he's failed to keep 99 times before. This time, there won't be 100. Despite making 99 attempts to rescue his daughter, he still had not succeeded. No matter what she tried, each attempt resulted in catastrophe, and her life was lost again and again. The story started when people across the world began transforming into zombies. This event led to the downfall of the whole world. A father, driven by desperation, went to great lengths in his efforts to save his loved one. They battled relentlessly against the undead. He did everything in his power to keep his cherished daughter safe. He found himself unable to do anything. Before much time had passed, both of them had met their end and were buried. Rather than finding eternal rest, he found himself called upon by a divine goddess who bestowed upon him the gift of 99 lives. He possessed the ability to return to life after dying up to 99 times, giving him repeated chances to find a way to stay alive. He sets out on a journey, starting from nothing, determined to shield his daughter from harm. Thus, the relentless pattern of perishing and beginning anew continued. The experience of traveling back through time goes on. With every regression, he made an effort to surpass his previous attempts. Despite their efforts, they ultimately faced defeat. Despite everything, this extraordinary father always holds on to hope. He refuses to let go of the single ambition driving him forward. They were determined to endure this torment over and over, no matter how many thousands of times it took. He was more than willing to take action, as long as it meant there was hope of saving his daughter from this terrible ordeal. On his penultimate try, he manages to arrive at a well-guarded stronghold, a place where military forces could have offered him safe haven. By the time he discovers it, his daughter has already disappeared. Rather than choosing to end his own life and begin again, he decides to embrace the sorrowful destiny that awaits him. He spends the remainder of his life living as any ordinary individual would. Despite the passage of many years, his desire to rescue his daughter remains constant. Driven by his desperation to see her again, he ultimately sacrifices his own life, seizing one last opportunity to bring her to safety. After coming back, he remains standing in that spot. With complete readiness, they set out to take the next step. He remembers the time he managed to find his way to the shelter in Dijon, but the memory is bittersweet because his daughter did not survive the journey. Everything that had happened could be traced back to the errors he had made in the past. Now he stood prepared, drawing on all the hard-earned lessons from his grueling adventure. Determined not to fall into old patterns, he silently promised himself that past errors would not be repeated. He carefully pushes the front gate open, making sure to stay alert. He was resolved to set out at last on his voyage to Dijon. However, an unexpected dose of reality catches him off guard. This time, instead of finding his doorstep empty as it had been before, he saw it crowded with the living dead. Zombies filled the entire street, creating a chaotic and terrifying scene. People surged forward with the same frantic energy as shoppers scrambling for discounted toilet paper on Black Friday. The unexpected turn of events renders him motionless, paralyzed by disbelief. In all of his previous 99 attempts, he had never encountered anything quite like this. Before he can complete his thoughts, the undead interrupt him. Before he can react, they have already surrounded him. His daughter jolts him back to reality, He shoves her without hesitation. Returning inside the house, he forcefully closed the door behind him with a loud bang. He put himself in harm's way, determined to give her even a few more moments of safety. She desperately implores him to unlock the door, her voice filled with urgency and hope. Despite the setback, this remarkably confident man remained determined to face defeat by himself. Despite the agony tearing through his body, he gritted his teeth and refused to cry out. There was no chance that this would be enough to break his determination, not after everything he had already overcome. Having faced death almost 100 times, he no longer felt any fear when his body was ripped apart once again. A series of images raced across his thoughts. He remembered the close connection he used to have with his daughter during her early childhood. He cherished her now just as he had in the past. His affection for her burns just as intensely as it ever did. The strength of their unshakable connection rekindled his resolve. He is determined not to let these cursed creatures be the ones to end his life in disgrace. A mysterious force stirred within him, sending a surge of unnatural power coursing through his body. With a surge of strength, he hoisted 12 zombies onto his shoulders in a single, forceful motion. He hurls them in all directions as if they were nothing more than bags of garbage. In that moment, the once lazy father seems to have become a superhero, driven entirely by his deep affection. A reckless zombie decided to confront him, believing it would be a smart move. It discovers the truth through difficult experiences. The father tore through the crowd with such force that it seemed as if they were made of nothing but thin sheets of paper. A zombie sank its teeth into him. He retaliates with a strength 10 times greater than what he received. Simultaneously, he drove his fist forcefully through the chest of yet another lifeless body. The character propelled themselves upward, soaring off the ground. With unstoppable force, he hurled a zombie down to the earth, its impact crashing like a blazing meteor from the sky. Even those who remained oblivious now appeared to understand that they had provoked the wrath of the wrong father. He stood outside, gathering power, his physique shaped by countless battles. A mere stern look from this dedicated father has the power to... The undead began to withdraw, overwhelmed by terror. At the same time, his daughter managed to regain her composure while she remained indoors. As the gate slowly swung open, a hopeful light spilled into the darkness. As the door swings open, she catches a glimpse of what lies beyond, and for a brief moment her heartbeat quickens in surprise. Her father appears in front of her, radiating vitality and strength, his physique reminiscent of a statue carved by ancient artisans. His muscular physique exuded power and confidence, possessing an allure capable of leaving single mothers throughout the city breathless. On the 7th day since the outbreak began, the focus moves to the bustling heart of the capital city, Seoul. Located in the district, a well-known grocery store stands out, famously called A-Mart. The significance of this detail soon becomes clear. In the following scene, a group of soldiers stood at the entrance, their expressions tense and their posture defensive as they kept watch. They wondered how it was possible for 2 survivors to make it this far. With zombies overrunning the whole district, darkness pressed in from every direction as Min steadily approached. The egg-headed soldier's anger intensified to such a degree that it seemed as if his head might burst from sheer frustration. Nearly every one of them now had their weapons trained on him, prepared to fire without hesitation. The person leading the group looked over and wondered aloud about the injuries on the young man's face. He amusingly comes to the conclusion that Min must be a celebrity, judging by his stylish sunglasses. Although the conclusion was amusing, it seemed to be a positive outcome in the end. A formidable new character entered the scene, a notorious captain with a reputation for trouble. She boldly ordered the pair to leave immediately. Known to everyone as the Black Widow, she gave off such intense energy that it seemed as if, after her fate in Avengers Endgame, had found a new life within this world. Remained firm in her position, showing no sign of trust toward the two. She insisted they would not find refuge in this place and urged them to leave immediately. She deliberately steps close to him, staring him down as she tells him to leave her alone. To the astonishment of both of her dominant alter egos, Min's expression grew troubled as he noticed his daughter's health worsening. He explained that a week spent wandering without direction had made asthma much more serious. In desperation, he pleaded for help, pouring every bit of emotion into his performance, convincing her to come to his daughter's aid. He even claimed that he would be willing to give up his own life. He would do anything to keep his precious daughter safe. For a brief moment, the captain stood stunned by the depth of his love for his child. In the following moment, their mood shifted to irritation as they abruptly left. Earlier, even Egghead considered Min's actions to be a foolish stunt. The crew found it especially difficult since their captain was known for his icy demeanor and complete disregard for anyone's feelings. The scene shifted to the most hilarious moment of the chapter. Egghead glanced over, his mouth falling open in shock when he caught sight of his captain's pitiful expression. Meanwhile, the girl struggled to keep her feelings in check as she listened to the story. The character ultimately experiences a shift in perspective. Decided to let the pair join the group of survivors, explaining her choice by saying they could use the extra help. Everyone could tell the real reason was different. Beneath her tough exterior, she appeared gentle at heart. The situation needed a closer look to truly understand what happened. Had a remarkable ability to manipulate reality, making him an expert at gaslighting others. He felt a genuine smile form as he noticed that the captain remained exactly the same as always. During his earlier meetings with her, he discovered that she had once served as a soldier. Despite having retired from that life, took on the duty of bringing together many survivors and went to great lengths to defend the shelter. Outwardly, she had a reputation for being harsher than anyone could believe, often likened to a pitiless snake. Yet, beneath that fierce exterior, she could not resist tales of parents laying down their lives for their children. He cleverly took advantage of this vulnerability when he met her. Felt furious about what he had just done. She felt upset by his willingness to leave her behind. Despite everything, she continued pretending to have asthma, forcing out raspy coughs that sounded unnatural and exaggerated. The soldier's irritation was evident. However, in truth, Min alone is aware of what really happened. He noticed that his daughter's mental state had declined more than in any of his earlier attempts, reaching its lowest point yet. Ensuring her safety became his top priority. What troubled him most were the two unexpected factors that had suddenly appeared. In this lifetime alone, he noticed the timeline change as a direct result of the events that took place just 1 week earlier. A boy, after being bitten by zombies, unexpectedly gained superpowers as a result. He seemed so disconnected from himself now that calling him hardly felt accurate anymore. They began by examining the first steps necessary for survival. The mart offers a wide variety of supplies and resources, ensuring there is much for everyone to enjoy. In addition to its other features, the area was well protected by numerous guards, guaranteeing everyone's safety. He noticed an unfamiliar sight. A building had crumbled right beside him, something he had never witnessed in this area before. The soldier, taken aback by this revelation, questioned him with suspicion, remarking that he was behaving as if he already knew what was going to happen. 3 days earlier, an event had occurred that became the focus of his story. Without warning, a horde of zombies lunged at the group and launched an attack. The captain, ever selfless by nature, she single-handedly drew everyone away, leading them into that very building. The entire area was completely overrun by hordes of ravenous zombies. The woman destroyed the structure by detonating explosives that had been placed beforehand. As the building came crashing down, it buried the zombies beneath the debris. Given the current situation, the group was left as nothing more than debris and ashes, showing no signs of recovery. Even if a few managed to live through the destruction, there was no way for them to make it out of the fallen structure. Without warning, the soldier shifts his gaze toward Min. He seems visibly scared, his expression marked by fear. Initially, Egghead bursts into laughter, ridiculing him as if he truly believed zombies might suddenly appear. The irony became clear the moment he spoke, as an enormous zombie silently emerged from behind him. The enormous, wild-eyed man loomed above the small, uniformed fighter. The creature revealed its horrifying, mutated form. The once confident genius now stood speechless, completely at a loss, while his reckless actions had finally caught up with him, leaving him on the brink of facing the consequences. The massive creature lifted its arm high, preparing to deliver a powerful blow. With just one blow, the human was utterly destroyed. However, there was even more to the story. The same zombie approached Captain and came dangerously close to catching her as well. Because of her remarkable agility, the villain manages to slip away at the last possible moment. Her soldiers stared in disbelief at the appearance of zombies, confusion spreading among them as they tried to figure out the origin of these creatures. She quickly prepared her troops and directed them to unleash their weapons on the repulsive enemy. A barrage of bullets erupts from the soldiers' weapons as they begin their assault. Despite their efforts, Steve effortlessly absorbed every bullet fired his way, all while collecting aura without breaking a sweat. A thunderous roar erupts from the terrifying beast. The creature suddenly sprang toward the group of soldiers. The slaughter erupted when a powerful uppercut instantly knocked out 3 of his followers. A single unfortunate man remains, utterly vulnerable and paralyzed by fear for his life. For an unknown reason, the zombie raised both arms, determined to crush him into bits. Luckily, the captain, thinking quickly and placing others before herself, tosses her backpack to draw attention away from her team. She successfully pulls him out of harm's way. She cautions the clown that staying calm is necessary for his survival. The batty captain drifts into deep thought, struggling to steady herself as she comes to the unsettling realization that they are now up against something far more dangerous than a typical zombie. Her initial worry centers on the mart, and she remembers that it serves as a place of safety. She guides the remaining group in the direction of the structure. As the group rushed forward, Min attempted to strike up a conversation, but quickly cut him off, snapping at him to be quiet and focus on running. Is struggling to stay on track. The situation stirred a sense of protectiveness within the boy, awakening his paternal instincts. The Dresden spun around to confront the grotesque heap of zombie flesh. With every ounce of strength channeled into his fist, he launches himself at the beast, determined to battle it with nothing but his bare hand. The story now follows, who had a plan to draw the terrifying zombie toward a strong barricade constructed just beyond the mart's entrance. This barrier was built with such strength and thickness that even a giant zombie wouldn't be able to break through it. Thanks to this, could buy some time before disaster struck, giving them a chance to concentrate on targeting its vulnerability. Suddenly, a wave of terror washes over her as she becomes aware of a dreadful truth. From her vantage point, she noticed the group of survivors gathered on the first floor. She decided to pause for a moment, taking time to appreciate the impressive, convinced that truly excelled in every possible way. The situation had taken a drastic turn for the worse now that the remaining survivors were gathered in this place. The sudden development forces the captain to stop right away and quickly adjust the course of action. Frustrated by the circumstances, she refused to allow the creature to harm anyone nearby. Determined, she planned to draw its attention to herself, proving her strength and courage. This was a true example of a powerful female lead. Glanced over at, only to be shocked by the realization that her father had completely vanished from sight. The captain's anger boiled over when she realized all her hard work had been for nothing, as father ended up leaving his own daughter behind. The girl gestured toward another path, suggesting to the captain that Min Suk could be found in that direction. Caught off guard, yet still wearing a full face of makeup, the captain stares at the unfolding scene, unable to hide his complete surprise. She watched as their friend fiercely attacked the zombie, relentlessly pounding its head. They relentlessly pounded and broke it apart, leaving its head severely damaged and misshapen. With a decisive move, delivered a final blow that brought an end to the zombie's existence. Even the most experienced soldiers found themselves speechless, unable to respond. The sight before them was so horrific that those who remained alive found themselves unable to face it. The zombie's existence had come to an abrupt end. The young man calmly caught his breath, making it seem as though defeating a giant creature with nothing but his own strength was an everyday occurrence for him. Captain stood before him, her eyes filled with disbelief and mistrust as she struggled to comprehend the situation. Meanwhile, Min showed no concern for anyone around him. The very first action he takes is to express regret to his cherished daughter, admitting he failed to keep his word and let her see him in such a vulnerable state. He admits without hesitation that his daughter's well-being matters to him more than protecting his own secret. For that reason, he decided to step in and do something about it. The circumstances grew more tangled, as developed a deep mistrust toward the man. She became so suspicious that she aimed a gun directly at him, demanding to know who he truly was. He appeared as though he had just stepped out of a magazine, his muscles defined and his presence exuding confidence. Min made a formal introduction and started to remove his glasses. His willingness to go to such extremes deeply troubles his cherished daughter. She worries that the soldiers might take his life if they discover who he really is. As the moment reached its peak, Min brought the tension to an eerie close by declaring himself a zombie, then confidently elevating his title to zombie expert. The moment he spoke, an uneasy hush settled over the room. Both and his daughter found themselves puzzled, unable to understand what exactly a zombie expert was supposed to be. With his Gaslighter Pro Max abilities in full effect, Min claims that, from the moment the apocalypse began, he has been studying every zombie he encounters, searching for their flaws and discovering what puts them at risk. This, he insists, is the secret behind how he managed to take down the muscular zombie at the start. He felt genuinely excited about offering his assistance to everyone. At the beginning, gazes at him with a cheerful grin, softly chuckling in response to his explanation. Suddenly, she lost control and pressed a knife against his throat, making it clear she didn't believe a single word of his story. As attempted to step in, the other girl silenced her abruptly, making it clear that the truth of the situation could not be. Despite being just an average human, the man had managed to destroy a creature with his own hands, a zombie that had seemed unstoppable even when shot at. Even more unsettling were his deep crimson eyes, which looked identical to those of the zombies. She steps in so close that their faces are nearly touching, her eyes sharp as she questions whether Min can still be called human. The distance between them shrinks until it almost seems like she might kiss him right then and there. Zombie Papa shook his head in disagreement, explaining that the earlier bullets had, in fact, caused significant harm. The captain, still puzzled, clarified that the zombie had already been severely weakened by the gunfire. He explained that his only task was to end the battle by delivering the last strike. The zombies known as the Eater class come into existence when several individual zombies combine into a single entity. Their merged forms seem reminiscent of the fusion technique seen in Dragon Ball Z. This union grants them an even tougher exterior, making them exceptionally hard to defeat. Despite the zombie's impressive resilience, it possessed a significant vulnerability. Its neck was especially susceptible to attacks. While offering his explanation, Min realizes that he isn't actually lying, although he knows that regular punches would never have defeated the monster. Expressed discomfort about his eyes, prompting him to explain in a relaxed manner that he had inherited a genetic trait resulting in low melanin, which made his eyes appear that way. The primary reason he keeps his eyes hidden is his awareness that others often stare at him strangely, much like the captain is doing at this very moment. Now that both of her worries had been addressed, Min confidently steered the discussion, asking whether the captain continued to suspect him of being a zombie. The captain's expression shifts, revealing a mix of worry and doubt. Even though he spoke convincingly, she still couldn't ignore the nagging suspicion that there was something off about him. Despite everything, the most persuasive thing about him remained the fact that, had he actually turned into a zombie, he would have lost all sense of self and never cared enough to safeguard his daughter. Because of this, finally gives in and walks away, which lets the two of them find refuge within the mall. The screen now displayed her notebook, drawing everyone's attention. Captain reminded Min that she intended to watch the actions of this so-called expert very carefully. Paused for a moment, struggling to come to terms with the fact that her soldiers were gone. Overwhelmed by remorse about what had happened, the character couldn't shake the weight of guilt pressing down on them. Immediately, a pair of her soldiers hurried over to assess her condition. Without hesitation, The captain struck swiftly, slamming his weapon into one of the men's knees. The intense pain forced him to collapse onto the floor. She inflicted this suffering as a consequence for their failure to obey her instructions. Their refusal to move the civilians to the lower level had put everyone's lives in danger. Discovers that the clowns became so frantic that they completely disregarded her instructions. Her anger intensifies, realizing their blunder nearly put everyone in the mall in grave danger. With a fierce look in her eyes, she made it clear through her expression that any future mistake would result in her being the one to end their lives. She turned away, her irritation clear as she strode off. It seemed that the boy she had kicked held a grudge against her, hinting that there might be trouble between them later on. The group decided to return to the mart, where the survivors were taking a break inside. Min and his daughter were among those present. Felt a wave of relief when the secret remained hidden, especially since fear had gripped her as soon as he began to speak. Finds it hard to accept that her father can tell a lie without showing any signs. Min realizes that is not someone who would be swayed easily, so he feels he must put in his utmost effort. Starts to question whether they are acquainted, noticing how he mentions her with a certain familiarity. The moment she spoke, a rush of memories surged through the boy's thoughts. In truth, during most of his previous regressions, he had built a strong bond with the captain, which explained his deep familiarity with her. Naturally, he keeps all of this hidden from his daughter. Meanwhile, finds herself taken aback that her father is even familiar with the word bluff, since she thought that was a term only used by kids. Zombie Papa offered her a warm smile, then explained that everything he knew had been taught to him by her. Because they had experienced 100 lives together, he gained much wisdom from her. Felt a strong sense of amazement, despite having no memory of what had happened, as her father made up his mind to leave the room and get her something delicious to eat. The girl appears truly puzzled, as she makes a sincere effort to recall what happened. Min found himself even more delighted, as he watched her look around in an adorable, puzzled way. When he finally gained his new abilities, his daughter asked him to give her his word. She hoped he would carry his secret with him to the grave, never revealing it to anyone. The fear that others might harm him grew stronger, knowing that as they learned more about who he truly was, their anxiety could drive them to lash out. In this way, they ended up safeguarding his secret, and as it turned out, his daughter's perspective was correct all along. Made his way through the aisles of the mart. He kept his thoughts to himself, fully aware that any mistake revealing who he truly was could have serious consequences in this place. The remaining survivors would quickly descend into chaos and fear. After some time had passed, he made his way back to his daughter, carrying something for her to eat. By the time he returned, she had already drifted into a deep, exhausted sleep. Gently draped a blanket over her, ensuring she was comfortable and warm as she rested. He shifts his focus to address the pressing issue at hand. The zombies had become quicker than ever, and it wasn't just their speed that was alarming. At the start, hundreds had crowded around his door, desperate to get in. New mutations kept appearing, and it had only been 1 week since the outbreak began. Events unfolded at such a breakneck pace that everything began to deteriorate. Unlike any experience from his past lives, this unfamiliar turn of events introduced a host of new complications. A persistent question continued to trouble him, as he struggled to understand the rapid transformation of the zombies. He believes he knows the reason, and suspects it stems from the impact he himself has had. The view shifts to reveal the city skyline. Located just beyond its boundaries, hundreds of deformed zombies advance steadily, closing the distance with each menacing stride. Min could sense their presence growing stronger, aware of their relentless approach. The relentless swarm seemed determined to track down him and his daughter, aiming to eliminate the only person capable of standing in their way. He couldn't tell if the zombies were actually afraid of him, or if his very presence unsettled them. The sole truth that could not be disputed was that these ruthless killers craved blood. They considered him an unpredictable factor on their end, as well, recognizing that he alone possessed the ability to halt the other man's actions. The boy considers his next move. He heads just beyond the city limits and intercepts the group before they have a chance to attack. Alone and isolated in a vast empty space, he greets the oncoming mob, thankful that their arrival saves him a great deal of trouble. Showed up carrying a ladder, clearly making an entrance and adding his own flair for a bit of extra attention. Surrounded by a menacing crowd of zombies, he confidently invites them to begin the spectacle. Before anything else happens, Bro snaps the ladder into 2 pieces. Equipping himself with a weapon more powerful than any firearm, Min prepares to finish the battle quickly, wanting his daughter to remain asleep so he can later make her a delicious meal. A sense of overwhelming confidence seems to pour from him, making his determination obvious. As expected, the grotesque figures advanced, preparing to launch their assault against him. A crowd of creatures piled over one another, each desperate for the opportunity to rip apart the person standing in front of them. Ladder Man charges forward with relentless determination. With incredible speed, he cut through and pinned the zombies before they could even realize what was happening. He faced not only ordinary zombies, but also dangerous mutated ones, taking them down by crushing their heads. He knocked them to the ground and landed punches with such force that a single blow was enough to completely destroy an Eater-class zombie. The object had been completely smashed to pieces. He shifts his attention toward the group of 12 other mutants. They set off an explosive device in an attempt to eliminate him. Now even the zombies outside were trying their hand at blasts, but there was no need for concern. The Ladder Man leaped straight to the highest point. Descending rapidly, a powerful shockwave erupted from the impact, obliterating every opponent in a single, devastating moment. He quickly brandishes his reliable axes, ready for action. With even greater speed, they began to cut through their opponents with swift and precise movements. Minutes slowly pass as he continues to release his anger. A zombie with 6 arms and a grotesque face moved to block his path. He ended up having his face crushed into the ground in a manner reminiscent of signature move. With a burst of intense energy, he swung his blade and cleanly severed its head. During this time, his daughter remains soundly asleep. In the following scene, slowly opened her eyes, returning to consciousness. She extended her limbs while she catches sight of her cherished father, the very man rumored to have single-handedly taken down 100 zombies earlier, had already returned home before she even opened her eyes. Not only had he prepared a meal, but he had also made a special breakfast shaped like a heart just for. She realized that, after all she had been through, hunger was likely settling in. She appeared cheerful and intelligent. She offered him a warm smile, then began to eat. In the following scene, the scene transitions to show the inside of the captain's office. Her subordinates arrived to deliver news about the thunderous noises that had echoed after midnight. To their astonishment, the sight that met them at the scene rendered them utterly silent with disbelief. Every last zombie had been completely destroyed, leaving no trace behind. He pounded his fist on the table in frustration, demanding to know how such a situation could possibly occur, and wondering aloud whether the zombies had started attacking one another. The soldier recounts his disbelief at the circumstances, yet insists that what unfolded before him was witnessed firsthand. Within just 4 hours, every zombie nearby had been completely wiped out. An unexpected thought flashes through her mind. Instructs her men to collect the remaining survivors. At last, they had managed to seize the perfect opportunity to break free from the mart. The scene shifts to reveal the viewpoint of those who managed to survive. The group gazed out in disbelief at the calm and lovely day before them. Despite the blood staining the streets, they were astonished to find that not a single zombie could be seen in the area. As the crowd breaks into celebration, curiosity spreads among them about the sudden disappearance of the zombies. Someone in the group points out the unusual silence, noting the absence of any groans or growls. All evidence seems to suggest a single, astonishing conclusion. Every last zombie has somehow vanished from the vicinity. For the first time since the apocalypse began, these people finally felt safe and relieved, their long days of living in fear replaced by a moment worth celebrating. Appeared puzzled as she expressed her uncertainty to her father, suggesting that it was possible the zombies had truly vanished after all. Unaware of recent events, The girl had no idea her father had launched a citywide investigation on those troublemakers just the night before. Carefully, he placed a helmet on her head and spoke to her with a tone full of concern. Min gave his daughter a single command, insisting that under any circumstances she must keep the helmet on her head. The way he spoke suggested that something awful might occur later on, causing his daughter to wonder about his true intentions. Captain and her team suddenly arrived at the mall, cutting the conversation short. Holding a megaphone, she lifted it and quickly made an announcement to everyone present. She investigated the unexplained deaths of all the zombies in the region, and her findings strongly indicated that every last one had been completely eliminated. The crowd erupted with cheers, their faces bright with happiness and the comfort of feeling secure. However, they were unaware that a genuine act of betrayal was about to unfold, coming immediately after the announcement they had just heard. Gary informed the group that they would be leaving the area immediately. The survivors, who had just begun to relax after enduring so much, found the announcement both startling and deeply confusing. They made their disagreements known, insisting that evacuation was unnecessary now that the threat of zombies had disappeared. Then chose to reveal something new to the group. Just 3 days earlier, radio contact had been lost with another group known as the 2nd Mechanized Infantry Brigade. This particular brigade was remarkable, as it had managed to endure every horrific event that had taken place in the area. Even more remarkable was the presence of well-equipped armored vehicles and a formidable team, which enabled them to efficiently shield and defend any remaining civilians. Although she tries to sound hopeful, her declaration sends a wave of fear through the group. The remaining survivors struggle to accept risking everything because of one uncertain radio message. Each person has their own doubts and grumbles. Confidently tells the group that she is acquainted with someone from the opposing side. Known as the Blue Hawk, a skilled soldier was at the helm of the brigade. The sight of his chiseled back forced a moment of silent admiration. It appeared so defined, it almost seemed as though his back possessed another back of its own. Although was certain of this man's trustworthiness, the many other survivors who lacked any familiarity with him were far less sure. For them, risking their lives based solely on a message received over the radio was simply too much to accept. The situation among the people was spiraling and was struggling to keep her composure. She desperately attempted to make them understand that they wouldn't make it through another zombie attack if it happened. However, the townsfolk clung to a false sense of safety, convinced that remaining where they were would protect them, believing the zombies would not come back. A member of the survivor group grew frustrated and loudly voiced his anger. Bro believed that was acting impulsively, letting her emotions guide her simply because she was a woman. It seemed as if he had been influenced by someone like Andrew Tate, since his reasoning made little sense. This careless and foolish tactic manages to persuade everyone else to shift all responsibility onto. After a long pause, the renowned zombie specialist GigaChad intervened, commanding the room's attention with an eerie warning. He made it clear to everyone that the zombies would inevitably come back, no matter how anyone felt about it. The very person who had just criticized leadership now attempted to find fault with their friend as well. Glanced at the clueless man and pointed out that if they stayed, they'd just end up as an easy meal for the next wave of zombies. Min's intense imagination paints such a terrifying picture of the upcoming events that the man becomes completely petrified with fear. He exposed the man's lies, leaving him shaken and terrified. The situation was so intense that the man's daughter found herself questioning what could have frightened her father. Turning attention back to Papa, he openly states that there's no promise they will make it through the transition period to join the brigade. His statement only deepens the survivors' anxiety and doubt, as they hesitate to risk their lives on an uncertain outcome that offers no assurance of protection. Positions himself in front of the assembled group, determined to challenge them by posing a question of his own, matching their tactics with one of his own. The situation would become dire if these individuals no longer received assistance from the soldiers and chose to ignore reasonable instructions. The crowd fell silent, each person pondering his sensible question, but soon their quiet reflection gave way to heated arguments among themselves. Without warning, some members of the crowd began to shift their trust towards strategy. It dawned on them that relying on the soldiers offered little hope for making it through the apocalypse alive. Clark Kent, easily recognized by his glasses, admitted that their continued survival was solely because Scroop had come to their aid. A single, straightforward question manages to restore their confidence, leading the crowd to erupt in enthusiastic cheers and chants, expressing their renewed trust in their leader's choices to help them endure the apocalypse. Although she had accomplished what she set out to do, Harry remained shocked by the turn of events. Moments earlier, she had been struggling to keep her cool as the crowd challenged her. Then, unexpectedly, the person claiming to be a zombie specialist entered, posed one question, and managed to sway the entire group to her side. At this moment, her thoughts are completely occupied with the urge to discover more about the striking blonde who continues to perform astonishing feats. Min, with a playful grin, insisted that he wasn't looking for any recognition, even before had a chance to offer her gratitude, showing just how well he understood her thoughts. Papa Min had faced countless risky situations throughout his life, relying on his negotiation skills to escape each one. Through these experiences, he had mastered the art of calming tense moments and managing tricky encounters. Simultaneously, he explains to Harry that his actions are solely to keep his daughter safe. The zombie expert reached out his hand, showing his full confidence in, and his belief that she would guide everyone toward victory. The woman can hardly believe how absurd his actions are. She placed her trust in the girl. Instead, she directs her attention to the task at hand, signaling the beginning of their escape plan. Taking charge as captain, she assures everyone that she will lead them safely and make sure everyone gets out together. In the following scene, the assistance provided by buses and other support vehicles made a significant difference. They managed to make their way through the chaos and violence that fills the streets. Was shown with a frustrated expression, likely irritated either by the silly helmet she had to wear or by not being able to sit beside her father. Takes charge at the very front of the mission, skillfully avoiding every threat that appears along the way. After much effort, the group finally succeeded in making their way across the Han River. Achieving this had become nearly impossible since the world fell into chaos, making it an extraordinary feat. Remained calm and steady, instructing her team to concentrate on the task at hand. They had more pressing problems demanding their attention. Turning to the topic of problems, the soldiers catch sight of a group of terrifying zombies looming in the distance. The unsightly creatures crowded together, almost piling atop one another in their desperate attempt to get closer. As soon as the captain spotted the zombies, she sprang into action, launching the operation without hesitation. She directed the civilians in Team C to keep to the right side of the road, while she and her squad would take the left. Having reached this point, it became important to discuss a key characteristic of zombies. Their sense of hearing is far sharper than their vision. This raises the question of how someone might use that fact to their benefit. Skillfully illustrated this concept as she pushed several boxes filled with metal cans. He hit the zombies in their faces, causing a loud commotion to erupt. The ripple of noise triggered intense sensory distress in the zombies, making them shriek and become increasingly hostile. Rather than diverting their attention, the intention was to provoke the zombies into following and pursuing the vehicle. Gestured for her team to quicken their pace, carefully maintaining enough space to stay safe in case the zombies picked up speed. The main issue was the swarm of zombie marathoners racing down the street, each one desperate to prove themselves as tough as David. Their incredible speed made it a real challenge for anyone to stay out of their reach. The captain assessed the massive crowd before her, and confident in her strategy, instructed her soldiers to make their way to bridge. The bridge had given way completely, signaling the moment to examine another key characteristic of zombies. Regardless of how dangerous things became, zombies remained fixated on a single goal, relentlessly pursuing humans. The clever captain takes advantage of this characteristic, directing her crew to completely turn the vehicle around. This technique enabled a precise stop right before the group arrived at the bridge's edge. At the same time, the rampaging zombies found themselves struggling to halt their wild speed, causing the whole swarm to slam into one another in a chaotic pileup. Meanwhile, Harry's truck maneuvered itself to eliminate any zombies in the vicinity. Despite efforts to eliminate them, the horde remained a threat, with numerous zombies still roaming the area. This transition brings the focus to examining the third characteristic of these terrifying spectacles. The most vulnerable area on their bodies was their back. The main strategy was to strike them from behind, and that was exactly what unfolded when appeared, driving a massive road roller that crushed their bones into powder. Widely recognized as the monarch among construction machines, the road roller served as a powerful crusher, effortlessly flattening zombies into a shape resembling a pizza. The man's enthusiasm as he polished the machine was so intense that it nearly sparked a curiosity to witness him work on something like a road roller or farm equipment. Meanwhile, the zombies didn't share in the excitement, as they were quickly overpowered and crushed beneath his relentless efforts. A few individuals lacked the sense to stay away, and boldly moved closer to the enormous machine. They ended up being completely defeated, all because of an error they had made themselves. And her group stood in stunned silence as they watched the zombies being slaughtered before their eyes. Because of its enormous size, Min skillfully operated the machine to herd all the zombies toward the edge of the bridge, eventually sending them tumbling straight into the ocean below. The focus swiftly moves to, and the group of bystanders, showing events through their eyes. She seemed troubled by an incident that occurred prior to their departure. The story shifts to an earlier moment, recalling a heated discussion in which she firmly objected to her father's choice to accept the dangerous task of assisting the soldiers. Out of everything, her greatest worry was that the soldiers might somehow discover Min's hidden truth. Fortunately for her, it seemed that he had come back unharmed for now. In fact, the legendary treasure One Piece was indeed real. At that time, he had amusingly mentioned to her that his involvement would be nothing more than helping out's team. Now that he had returned to driving a battered road roller through piles of zombie debris, the girl found herself speechless. Captain sprang forward, signaling for everyone to take cover behind her as she noticed a horde of furious zombies rapidly approaching. Despite their hopes, the road roller surged forward, crushing each zombie it encountered without mercy. The path became smooth and accessible, allowing civilians to move through the area without difficulty. The group manages to escape the dangerous zone unharmed. After enduring a lengthy ordeal filled with fierce zombie encounters, the group finally crossed into the secure grounds of the 2nd Brigade's base. Now, the focus shifts to learning more about this formidable brigade. Throughout nearly every cycle endured, this group consistently survived longer than most. It served as a crucial milestone in his journey, marking significant progress before he could finally arrive at the safety of Dijon. It was truly remarkable that they had managed to arrive at this location in only 8 days, an achievement that stood out as exceptional. Despite his progress and newfound strength, his father's concern began to surface, aware that giving in to arrogance could lead them down the same troubled path once more. Faced the terrifying reality that he would be consumed, powerless to stop it. Determined not to alter his fate, he planned to follow the identical path he had taken in every past life, hoping to keep things unchanged. For Min, this moment marked the true start of the battle. At the moment, everyone is showering him with praise because he worked hard alongside others to protect and save their lives. Although the soldiers had found the road roller by themselves, they were unfamiliar with how to use such a powerful piece of equipment. Seeing the zombie expert display some understanding of the machine led them to speculate about his possible experience in construction. However, Min quickly dismissed these assumptions, explaining that he had picked up the skill as a way to improve his chances of survival. In summary, everyone had arrived safely, much to the captain's relief. Amused by the situation, she expressed her gratitude to him, but he wasn't willing to simply accept it and move on. He playfully provokes her, hoping she will express her thanks to him once again. He was met with a sharp command to be quiet, cutting him off abruptly. The arrival of Sergeant Lee from the 2nd Infantry Brigade brought their interaction to a halt. With a respectful salute, the sergeant greeted the captain, clearly having expected her to arrive. Felt a wave of surprise wash over her when she realized these people already knew who she was. The sergeant explained that Colonel had informed them ahead of time that would be coming. Initially, stands frozen in disbelief. Amusingly, the sergeant reveals that the colonel gave clear instructions to watch for a headstrong woman officer, a detail that causes her entire team to break into laughter. Annoyed, she fixes them with a deadly glare, insisting they reveal where Colonel is. She learns that he is waiting by the back gate, since a group of zombies has suddenly appeared without warning. The captain suddenly came to a startling understanding. She feels a wave of fear when she learns that the colonel personally led his own team to confront the danger. The sergeant gently reassures her, explaining that no such incident took place, and helps her regain her composure. For reasons he couldn't explain, he forced a shaky smile and looked away, suggesting that he was hiding something more beneath the surface. The fearless colonel chose not to accompany his soldiers. Instead, he set out alone, a testament to his remarkable bravery. Now, the story shifts to reveal his perspective. Behind the brigade, soldiers stood in the watchtower, quietly keeping track of the unfolding events. The team began tracking a new milestone achieved by the colonel. Within just 35 minutes, people celebrated his success in defeating all the zombies. It seemed that this individual preferred close combat weapons instead of firearms, convinced that an axe was the perfect tool to take down zombies. He deliberately chose the more challenging path for the thrill it gave him, taking satisfaction in seeing the disfigured faces of the undead after he decapitated them. Known as the Blue Hawk, he carried a legacy of previous victories and now led the 2nd Infantry Brigade as its commander. The soldiers, gripped by fear over his wild behavior, advised him to use a gun in the future. They all understood that if someone like him ever became a zombie, it could spell disaster for everyone. Meanwhile, burst out laughing, finding it impossible to picture himself ever being bitten by brainless zombies. Considered himself far superior, viewing his opponents as incredibly slow in comparison. He had reached a point where he could easily anticipate their every move and had mastered their combat techniques, setting himself apart from the rest. He frequently criticized his own comrades, labeling them as burdens, and for that reason he refused to let them fight alongside him. Although the soldiers felt insulted by his words, they silently acknowledged the truth in what he said. After single-handedly defeating the whole group, the Blue Hawk began to notice a dull ache spreading through his joints. Due to his advanced age, he faced certain drawbacks. Despite this, monotony consumed him as he spent each day eliminating zombies, wishing someone would finally appear to offer him a real test of his abilities. It seemed that his wish had come true, as one of the Eater-class zombies suddenly rose to its feet, proving that it wasn't defeated yet. Feels a surge of disbelief as the creature turns toward him with a friendly grin. The ferocious zombie sprang toward him, its movements eerily reminiscent of the haunting figures that torment people during sleep paralysis. Before the zombie could react, the boy ran it over with his road roller, crushing it into a mess that resembled tomato paste. The soldiers stand in stunned silence, unable to find anything to say. The colonel immediately becomes cautious. Earlier, he had claimed that he operated on a higher plane and possessed the ability to detect a zombie's strength. Colonel Ho observed each of Min's movements, his eyes tracking the ominous shadow of death that seemed to cling to the boy's every step. To the colonel, it felt as though he had just discovered the most powerful zombie he had ever encountered. To further bewilder him, Min calmly presents himself, blending in seamlessly with humans while casually talking about his journeys alongside Captain. His only intention seems to be offering assistance. The Blue Hawk, overwhelmed by the intense fear radiating from, launches a full-force attack against him. The seriousness of the moment was undeniable. He had poured his entire strength into the swing of his axe. Just as his powerful blow was about to land, something happened. The soldiers grow fearful as they watch their colonel lash out at innocent civilians, his actions wild and unexplainable, as if he has lost his sanity. However, they were amazed to discover Min, an otherwise unremarkable person, had managed to stop the speeding axe with a single hand, a feat that seemed nearly impossible given how fast it was moving. The colonel felt such intense fear upon seeing that he instantly ordered his team to initiate a red alert without hesitation. He insisted that the figure before him was no ordinary person, but a creature more monstrous than human. Even the boy realized that deceiving this man would not be as easy as tricking everyone else. He began the conversation by revealing the colonel's name right away. With a surge of power, he struck the same axe so forcefully that it shattered into fragments. Min makes it clear that he wants to remain in this place, deciding that his top priority will be proving to the man before him that he has nothing to hide. Simultaneously, the zombie expert realizes that, given the colonel's usual methods, simple explanations will not convince him. This time, he decided to join in the game that enjoyed above all others. A faint trace of happiness appears in the colonel's smile. The man standing in front of him braces himself, preparing to engage in a confrontation. The colonel sees his opponent's stance and assumes it is a challenge to a duel. Without hesitation, the man releases his straps, readying himself for a fight. Throughout his life, the Blue Hawk had encountered every type of wild and reckless individual. To him, Min was already aware of his eagerness for a confrontation. The colonel directs all his concentration toward the protagonist, hurling himself downward with the force of a missile, driven by a fierce desire to uncover the enigma that is Min. The scene shifted, showing the soldiers carrying out the colonel's commands. They declared Code Red, sending a stark warning to everyone living there. Stared in disbelief, trying to make sense of the situation, but the soldiers remained silent, unwilling to explain anything. For the time being, they chose to simply carry out their instructions. Without warning, Captain Guac appeared unexpectedly, leaving no chance to voice her questions. The man boldly raised a gun and aimed it directly at her face. Annoying her deeply, Captain Guac remained vigilant, his senses heightened by the suspicion that the creature which had just assaulted their leader might be linked to, especially after it mentioned her name. The implication was clear. She posed a danger as well. Confusion filled her mind as she tried to comprehend being labeled a monster. The soldiers revealed his complete identity, following the instructions he had given them. Once more, the man's true identity remained a mystery to everyone, except the visitors who had arrived at the base. Min's cherished daughter appeared the most anxious of everyone, her concern for her father's well-being clearly visible in her expression. Returning to the battlefield, the man now stood confidently, channeling the strength that belonged to. With one powerful blow, the wall crumbled to pieces, causing the colonel to leap aside in alarm. The broken wall clearly demonstrated that this man possessed abilities far greater than those of an ordinary person. The Blue Hawk actually found it amusing that the boy continued to cling to his belief that he was still human. Reacted with astonishing speed, intercepting the colonel's kick with reflexes that seemed almost beyond human capability. In the blink of an eye, he was already in place, stopping the attack. In an instant, he disappears into thin air. The air seemed almost weightless, giving him enough seconds to circle the entire colonel. Min prepared himself, determined to defeat his opponent. Despite everything, it remained clear that the Blue Hawk possessed incredible speed. Despite being surprised, he manages to avoid the punch. At that exact moment, the colonel counters by landing a strong jab right on his face, striking him squarely and inflicting noticeable damage. It seemed unbelievable that he could stand his ground against a zombie with superhuman abilities. His determination was impressive. As both men paused to recover, the colonel seized by the collar and accused him of not giving his all, insisting that was deliberately holding back much of his power. This ability had been the key factor that allowed him to evade the previous punch and avoid being completely overpowered. Min silently acknowledges to himself that he truly is restraining a significant portion of his power. He held back his full strength, knowing that unleashing it completely would lead to the colonel's death, an outcome he wished to avoid. This wasn't merely an idle warning tossed out by a skinny child after a street brawl. The colonel struggled to accept the truth, especially since it came from someone capable of breaking through solid walls with his bare fists. Nonetheless, the reality remained undeniable. From the very beginning of their battle, he could feel with every part of his being that an insurmountable difference separated them. Feeling disoriented and uncertain, the colonel searches desperately for answers, silently examining the reasons behind his actions. In essence, the young man admits that his purpose for being here is to request protection. The colonel couldn't help but erupt into laughter, unable to contain himself as he laughed loudly right in front of the man. After all, it made perfect sense. Just moments ago, he had gone up against the world's most formidable fighter, and now that same unstoppable force was seeking his help for safety. The situation was so absurd that almost anybody would have found it funny. Min's real worry finally becomes clear. His anxiety isn't for his own sake. Instead, his cherished daughter stood encircled by the soldiers, with Close beside her. Although he possesses immense power, the kind-hearted father pleads solely for his daughter's safety and hopes to remain within the brigade's safe haven. He realizes his plea falls short, fully aware that words alone will not be enough. Min drops to his knees, showing just how deeply he cares. His pride means nothing to him when it comes to love. He gave in, fully aware that his compliance was the only way to guarantee his daughter's safety. Min decides he will fulfill any request the colonel makes, provided the colonel can assure him that his own terms will be honored. Later that evening, the setting moves to the brigade's civilian shelter, a place that offers refuge to the ordinary people who managed to survive. A noticeable change came over them as soon as they heard being called a monster. A wave of fear washes over the townspeople, leaving them uneasy and wary. They begin to doubt the boy's motives, whispering among themselves about the oddities in his unusual strength and striking eye color. Gradually, suspicion grows and many start to believe that he might actually be a zombie. Despite all his efforts to help the colonel that night, the young man remained locked up in chains, unable to gain his freedom just yet. As he waited, memories of the Blue Hawk's promise echoed in his mind, a vow that in exchange for his help, everyone would be permitted to remain at the brigade. However, what troubled him most was the thought of Min on his own, since someone with Min's temperament could pose a serious threat if not kept in check. It was himself who proposed that he should be kept separated and watched for as long as necessary, hoping this would help him gain the confidence of the brigade and its members by proving he posed no danger. Even though he sat by himself at that moment, his daughter cared for him deeply, so much so that she quietly approached, hoping to surprise him. From across the way, she offers him encouragement. Witnessing his child healthy and full of life filled the father with the deepest joy. Felt a surge of happiness as she recalled how, once the emergency warning ended, the soldiers treated them with sincere kindness, even granting her the chance to see her father. She felt uncomfortable with how crowded and cramped the shelter was. Despite all the suffering Min had gone through for his daughter, he expressed regret that he had failed to fulfill his vow to her. His words left her taken aback. He was weighed down by guilt, knowing he had let her down once again. Now, doubts filled his mind, and he wondered if she was truly upset with him for failing to honor his promise. Unexpectedly, she slams her hand against the window, catching him off guard. The memory of his priceless efforts lingered in their minds. Had the so-called zombie father not taken action, the people would never have found safety under the brigade's protection. Rather than showing any remorse, she offers him a cheerful smile, allowing him to bask in the satisfaction of his actions, regardless of the disapproval from others. A sense of pity welled up for the young man, whose relentless efforts went unnoticed as others continued to criticize him. Meanwhile, took a moment to reassure her father, expressing her unwavering confidence in his abilities one final time. The touching scene ends, as suddenly remembers she needs to hurry back for roll call. After saying goodbye to her father, the girl sped away, while Min, though still confined, felt content just to catch a glimpse of her. The truth was that with each stride made, her feelings surged within her, threatening to consume her completely. At one moment, tears began to stream down her face, revealing how hard she had tried to appear cheerful whenever she was with her father. Remained unchanged, even after they had softened in each other's arms. In truth, both of them regret being apart and are saddened by the distance between them. A glimmer of hope appears when an unexpected visitor arrives at Min's cell. The sergeant had arrived, ready to escort him to a meeting with the colonel. In the following scene, the Blue Hawk indicated a specific spot on the map. The location was believed to still have several people alive, and just a short while earlier, a signal had been detected from there, which backed up those beliefs. Despite the various signals coming in, the team noticed an unusual frequency mixed among them, the origin of which remained a mystery to them. Speed was deemed absolutely necessary for the mission, requiring a team that could act quickly and effectively. Because of this, the colonel assembled a select group of highly skilled soldiers to ensure every challenge could be met with precision. The squad was made up of just 2 members. Among them was the colonel himself. The second member of the group was Min. There was a strong sense that these two were about to take on the zombies in an intense fight, relying on teamwork as a duo. The colonel intended to take advantage of this situation to gauge Min's determination and his affection for his daughter, hoping to discover whether the father would truly go to any lengths for her well-being. Immediately after those words reach his ears, the young man shatters his restraints with astonishing strength, as if he possesses superhuman abilities. This action suggests that escaping was always within his power, yet he chose to remain captive out of concern for his daughter. Wonders aloud about the time of their departure. The colonel responded with an amused smile, while the Blue Hawk announced their immediate departure. Shock filled the scene as both characters radiated such intense energy in the closing image that it became clear the zombies stood no chance of survival. With that, the daring rescue mission at station officially began. The viewpoint changes, drawing the audience down below the collapsed remains of the station. In this moment, an infant lets out loud cries, hoping someone will notice and respond to its needs. Meanwhile, the other survivors remained seated in a row, holding on to hope that rescue would eventually arrive. The baby's relentless wailing posed a serious danger since it risked drawing the attention of nearby zombies. Meanwhile, Young added to the chaos by swatting the person beside her, disrupting his attempt to stay calm. A man seated a short distance from them began to grow irritated, expressing his annoyance about the noise. The elderly woman spoke up for Young, assuring the others that the child was just a baby and couldn't be expected to understand right from wrong. Smother felt deeply grateful for the woman's kindness. The young girl's eyes widened as she noticed an object floating above her in the sky. The little girl began to shout for her father while urgently gesturing toward the sky. At first, her mother felt puzzled by this behavior, but then a sudden chill crept through her as she became aware of the terrifying event that was about to unfold. She glanced upward toward the gloomy, stained ceiling and noticed a face emerging from the darkness. The creature's terrifying face looked like it belonged in a horror film, its bloody eyes wide with excitement as it appeared suddenly, startling everyone watching. Its appearance even called to mind the From Death note, with an uncanny similarity that was hard to ignore. The narrative abruptly shifts to heightened suspense, drawing attention to the beginning of the rescue mission at station. In this new scene, a horde of zombies comes into view, their disfigured faces and severed limbs painting a gruesome picture, while their guttural cries echo through the area, making it clear that any hope for a normal life is long gone. She stood out as the least attractive among everyone. All at once, a bright light flooded his vision, leaving him momentarily unable to see. Without warning, Bro found himself flung high into the air, soaring nearly 6 feet above the ground, before the vehicle struck him with devastating force. Within the confines of the car, the dynamic duo of Min and the Blue Hawk comes into focus. The colonel finds himself locked in a rivalry with Min, boldly claiming that his own truck far surpasses the capabilities of the road roller. Min, unable to brush off the colonel's remarks, takes the challenge to heart. The boy calmly explains the advantages of each option, noting that road rollers are powerful while trucks offer better movement. Meanwhile, as their playful discussion continues, they effortlessly crush zombies beneath their vehicle, treating the chaos like an everyday occurrence. The colonel raised 2 fingers to illustrate his point, then clarified that the mission depended on 2 primary variables. He began by focusing on the initial point, emphasizing how the structure came down. Notably, he pointed out that the entrance was now completely sealed off. Transportation was chaotic, with the subway tracks facing the same problems. The tablet screen displayed the second variable. The colonel extended his finger, directing attention toward a distinct mutation variant. he reveals that the mysterious being is trapped inside, along with the survivors. It became clear that the creature was an urgent danger to the survivors, leaving them no time to hesitate if they wanted to avoid being killed. Min passed the tablet over, and it was impossible not to notice the impressive veins running along his arms. The colonel shifted the conversation to the team's main advantage for the mission, the vents at station. He explained that these vents were not only in flawless shape, but also offered a straightforward path for them to follow. The strategy was simple. Lego and his partner would enter through the vents, moving carefully toward the survivors. This approach formed the foundation of their plan to make the mission succeed. Focusing on the survivors' well-being, the colonel stresses the importance of carrying out the mission without any mistakes. However, rather than sharing the colonel's viewpoint, the boy firmly refuses, catching the other person off guard with his unexpected response. A heavy silence settled over the room when the Blue Hawk registered Min's protest. In his mind, Min was absolutely certain that their mission was doomed. He believed without a doubt that they had no chance of pulling it off. The colonel listens closely to the argument, feeling his pride wounded by the bold remarks as the name of the operation is announced. The boy pointed out that, in all of his earlier efforts, the colonel had always devised similar strategies, only changing certain details each time. Despite the variations, every approach resulted in an identical conclusion. Still, Min acknowledged that the colonel consistently came up with the most effective plans for each mission. The truth was clear. Not a single person made it out alive in any of them. With that decision made, they moved to assess how the survivors were faring. As soon as the survivors' eyes fluttered open, anticipation filled the air. The person was suspended upside down, tangled in the sticky threads of a spider's web. Suspended high above, something hung from the ceiling. His mother demanded an explanation, her voice sharp with confusion and concern. Overcome by panic, she scans her surroundings in desperation, her anxiety intensifying as she frantically searches for. Fortunately, the quick movement she made, while trying to trick her captor, loosened the web enough for her to break free, and she tumbled to the ground with a loud crash. Fearing for her child's safety, she cried out desperately for. The rest of the survivors grew increasingly uneasy. Strangely, no one among them seemed to recognize Dell in the slightest. With nowhere else to turn, Dell's mother approaches the man who had earlier voiced his annoyance about her child's cries, hoping he might have information about the missing baby. The exhausted man, who remains the sole person lingering in the area, admits that he has no idea why he is still there, let alone where the baby could be. Anxiety built within the man when the others ignored his silent pleas and left him trapped in the web. Without warning, the elderly woman from before silently approached him, her lips curled into an unsettling grin. The young man stood in stunned silence, his mind racing with confusion as he tried to figure out why this woman was present. Despite the clues before him, it seemed he still hadn't pieced everything together. The woman's eyes glowed with a sinister red light as she fixed her intense gaze directly on him. Her features twisted into a terrifying, monstrous form as her jaw grew to an enormous size. The girl devours him piece by piece, as if he were nothing more than a kit bar. All the while, the man is ripped apart in front of everyone, his pain unfolding in real time. The audience witnessing his painful demise stood frozen in silence, fear gripping them as they worried for their own safety. Without warning, his body finally collapses onto the ground. However, as he rises to his feet once more, he had lost all traces of his former humanity. Now, with his ripped face twisted into a grin, he gazed hungrily at the new prey before him. The survivors stood on the edge of a new chapter, one that marked the start of their downfall. The narrator hinted at their clever wordplay and silently invited the audience to share their thoughts below. Someone shouted the word zombie at the top of their lungs. The man with the man bun, standing at the front, was suddenly attacked and eaten by the zombie, as if the creature held a special vendetta against him. This distraction allowed the others a chance to run for their lives. While hurrying to get away, confusion filled their minds as they wondered how a zombie could have ended up inside to begin with. Despite the fact that everyone should be looking out for themselves, Dell's mother becomes overwhelmed with fear and focuses solely on protecting her child. Sadly, When the group of survivors reaches the entrance, they find their path blocked with no way out. Without warning, Smother caught the sound of a soft voice. It was the word Baba, spoken just as her daughter had said it before. While watching where the noise was coming from, she gazes intently at the stairs that descend to the floor below. One of the men attempted to hold her back from running toward a hopeless situation. Despite his efforts, she charged forward without hesitation, driven by a mother's instinct to risk everything for her child. The young man's father attempts to urge his son not to linger and encourages him to keep up with everyone else. Without warning, the unfortunate boy cried out from behind, desperately pleading for his father's protection. All the survivors who had been hurrying together in one direction suddenly found their path blocked, as zombies ambushed them and brought them down. Returning to the girl's mother, she moved through the darkness, her ears straining for any hint of her child's cries. With determination, she whispered promises of rescue, vowing to find her daughter no matter what. The mysterious voice echoed ahead, drawing her deeper into the shadows as she repeated her assurances of salvation. Step by step, she descended the staircase, her heart pounding, until she finally reached the bottom and cried out desperately for Duh. The tale suddenly shifts into a much darker direction, casting a shadow over the events. The baby, once an adorable little girl, had changed completely. Now she had become a grotesquely distorted zombie, treating people as if they were nothing more than playthings to chew on. Spotty had sprouted legs, giving her the unsettling look of a spider. The unfortunate child cried uncontrollably, lost in madness, its desperate voice calling out for Baba as though overwhelmed by unbearable pain. The mother reacts with an intense outburst, losing control of her emotions. She no longer felt any desire to struggle, her gaze fixed on her suffering child as disbelief clouded her mind. Refusing to accept reality, she convinced herself it was nothing more than a twisted nightmare. Paralyzed by shock, she stood motionless, unable to do anything. Throughout the scene, seizes her own body, draws her mother's form close and bites down, severing her mother's head with her jaws. Just then, in a burst of unexpected brilliance, Truck Kun made a dramatic entrance. Unleashing a blast of intense firepower, they obliterated the entire station in a searing explosion. The intense heat seared the infant's skin, drawing out a piercing cry of agony. Because of this, Smother stands safely nearby, observing everything as it happens. They decided to revisit its in-depth examination of the Colonel's strategy as it applied to each iteration. After emphasizing that the Colonel's plan had not managed to rescue a single person, Min Suk stood in place, his appearance reminiscent of a figure from ancient mythology, as he declared the assignment to be beyond reach. Unless they resorted to unnatural means, survival would have been impossible. Now, surrounded by scorching fire, he faces the mother with a calm composure, showing no sign of distress even as the flames consume him. After quite a while, Min's unique power was finally unveiled. Surprisingly, he wasn't even considered human according to the classification. This truly set him apart, though it was the only talent he possessed. The moment had arrived to talk about the terrifying creature called a mutated horror that sent chills down spines. The spider-like creatures belonged to a powerful, high-ranking species, known for rendering humans unconscious before taking their faces. Stan, surrounded by fire, his eyes fixed fiercely on the looming disaster, unwavering in his resolve. The creature shook with fear and let out a piercing scream as it felt the overwhelming threat radiating from him. Without warning, the Beside unleashed a rapid burst of spiderweb, shooting it forward at incredible speed. The attack was about to strike the boy at any second. Known for their tough exoskeletons much like real spiders, had a reputation, but this armor made them especially vulnerable to heat. The character broke through the strands of the creature's web. With a powerful tug, the boy yanked the zombie so hard that its face crashed into the ground. Zombie Daddy surged forward at an incredible pace, fully determined to take advantage of the creature's vulnerability. As soon as he gets near, Boy unleashes a barrage of powerful punches, swinging at his opponent with the intensity of someone competing in a $1 million knockout contest. The creature found itself overwhelmed by the force of his powerful attacks, blood gushing from its wounds as it howled in pain with each punishing strike. Min's plan relied on smothering them with intense fire, leaving it unable to defend itself. This was why he kept the flames burning around him, determined not to let them die out. As he got ready for one last powerful blow, Min drew back his fist, preparing to strike with everything he had. Just as he was on the verge of defeating the monster, a sudden blow from a stone struck him unexpectedly, leaving him vulnerable and unprepared. Startled by the situation, he scans his surroundings and notices Des Mother, who appears completely lost and unable to help herself. Her eyes welled up with tears, and her face twisted with anguish as she pleaded desperately for the stranger to spare her precious daughter from further harm. The scene unfolds with a heartbreaking intensity as the mother prepares to sacrifice herself, determined to protect her enormous daughter from any further danger. Unfortunately, this selfless act leaves Min Sook vulnerable, providing her with the perfect chance to exploit her moment of distraction. At that instant, the creature's jaws twisted open, transforming into a swirling maw lined with jagged teeth. This was definitely one of those situations where no one in their right mind would dare to poke anything near it. The force was so powerful that the boy's body moved as if he were weightless, fluttering helplessly like a sheet of paper. Smother, on the other hand, she stood frozen, unable to do anything but watch the events unfold before her eyes. The force proved overwhelming, yanking her helpless form across the ground toward the zombie, as Min struggled desperately to fight against its grip. He pressed his palm against the ground, straining to withstand the intense force bearing down on him. Despite his frustration, the creature in front of him continued to make noise and relentlessly drew in air, acting as if it were a powerful vacuum cleaner that simply wouldn't stop. The creature advanced steadily toward, now only a breath away from striking and severing his head completely. The boy faced a dire predicament. Although he possessed great strength, all he could manage was to press himself against the ground in a desperate attempt to withstand the force dragging him. Faced with the inevitability of death, the cherished father was unexpectedly swept up in a vivid memory of his affectionate daughter. He recalled how had reassured him in the cell, promising her unwavering loyalty and insisting she would remain with him no matter how much the world turned against them. He decided to follow her suggestion, and with some effort raised his head as high as he could. With intense force, he slammed his head into the ground, causing the floor to break apart beneath him. Min rose once more and mimicked his earlier attempt, seemingly eager to break free from the ground. The zombie showed no signs of slowing down, and relentlessly continued to use its draining power over and over again. Without warning, they came to a halt, completely unable to move or take any action. Its powerful uppercut connected with the creature's jaw in a swift, forceful blow. With a swift and precise motion, the monster's head was sent flying as the blow landed perfectly. The unable to do anything else, imitates Des' small voice, pleading for her mother to step in and offer comfort during her distress. Despite the creature's desperate wails, Min showed no mercy. He drove his knee hard into its face, refusing to believe a single word it uttered, and insisting that all of its statements were lies. The person's face had become so disfigured that it was impossible to tell who they once were. Blood spewed from the zombie's mouth as Min kept himself safely away. At this moment, it appeared truly pitiful, evoking a sense of sadness in anyone who saw it. The sound that escaped was weak and miserable, perfectly matching the pitiful display desired from the creature. The narrator described how the most dreadful fate possible awaited the zombie. The boy confidently promised the grotesque creature that the only sounds it would make from that moment forward would be cries of pain. The lets out a piercing scream, using all the strength it has left. The boy was tearing off the creature's limbs one after another, showing no mercy. The story then shifts its attention to the remaining individuals who have managed to survive. At that moment, the group struggled desperately to keep the zombies from forcing their way in. They understood that if the barricade failed, none of them would survive. More survivors gathered, hoping that their growing numbers would help them withstand the approaching attack. By now, a few among them had begun to question whether their opponents were truly zombies at all. These creatures moved with surprising stealth, and their horrifying faces were even more unsettling than those of typical zombies. The boy's father urged him to stay quiet and focus on holding their ground. Without warning, he noticed an object far away. Smoke began to gather within the room, slowly filling the space. Thanks to Min's earlier plan to unleash the flames, the group's odds of making it out alive had dropped sharply. Fear began to take hold as they realized escape routes were quickly disappearing, leaving them desperate and on the verge of panic. Gigachad Papa, standing confidently, reminded everyone that their attention should be on the things within their control. Without warning, the son looked at his father, his face serious and dark. Noticing this, the father turned toward him, curious and concerned, and asked what was troubling him this time. The son pointed out something unusual, noting that the usual sounds of zombies shuffling nearby had completely faded away. Without warning, a loud bang echoes as the door forcefully crashes shut. The remaining survivors retreated, coming to terms with the harsh reality of their defeat. With the door on the verge of breaking down, escape was no longer an option for them. The father reacts with astonishment and disbelief. He tries to figure out who the man standing in front of him is. The person everyone was talking about turned out to be easily identified by his strong, muscular frame. He was the one who had taken down the zombies near the entrance. Meanwhile, the rescue mission at station continued to unfold. The air ducts that had been part of their earlier strategy came into play as hurled one skyward. At the same time, the colonel kept a close watch, waiting for it to show up. Satisfaction spread across his face as he grinned. As the sun began to rise, all 37 survivors were safely evacuated, marking the mission as a success. As the soldiers examined the area where the trap had been set, they stumbled upon a surprising discovery. Had survived, spending all this time ensnared within one of the webs. Min managed to rescue almost 40 individuals in an area where escape was impossible for the trapped survivors. It could only be described as something miraculous. The team made their way back to their base. Stood speechless, amazed at the sudden change. Those who had previously dismissed him as a dangerous zombie were now speaking up for him, referring to him with respect as Miracle Man. Min, feeling shy, acknowledged their gratitude by quietly raising his hand in a small wave. At the same time, Captain stands off to the side, his expression sour despite his recent accomplishments. The colonel stepped forward and clapped for the young man, announcing that he had successfully completed the mission and gained the confidence of the community. Amidst the lively throng, Min's gaze finally meets that of his daughter. He genuinely cared for just one person. He looked at her with a warm smile. He yearns for her affection, pulling her into a warm and complete embrace. At last, a summary of the operation's results was provided. Although 15 people had lost their lives and 12 had suffered minor injuries, the mission was considered successful because 40 individuals had been saved. This brought everyone back to the barracks once again. The sergeant who had participated in the earlier mission could now be seen taking a break, clearly not in the best shape. After surviving that brutal last mission, he found himself unable to summon the strength to rise from his bed. The door swung inward, then clicked firmly as it shut. As the sergeant rested peacefully, an unexpected development unfolded. A swollen, infected lump began to emerge on the left side of his neck, changing the situation entirely. A sense of dread swept through the camp, when the sergeant's expression shifted into an eerie, unnatural grin, signaling imminent danger for everyone stationed there. Unaware of the grim turn of events, the crowd outside continued their cheerful celebrations, still basking in the triumph of the mission. Enjoys spending pleasant moments alongside his mother, joining the two of them in their activities. At the same time, the colonel radiated an effortlessly cool energy. Building a genuine friendship with Min, the colonel remembered his initial thoughts upon meeting the towering blonde. He admitted to himself that, from the very beginning, he had sensed there was something unique about Min. He truly hadn't expected that he would accomplish something so extraordinary. The Blue Hawk made it clear that he would depend on his keen perception to guide them through the upcoming missions, expressing his complete confidence in his abilities. He gazed fondly at his favorite beverage, believing that this night deserved to be marked by the uncomplicated joy of raising a glass together. At the same moment, if the two of them put all their effort into getting drunk, they would quickly run out of drinks. The colonel lifts his glass in tribute, honoring the memory of the fallen heroes who departed before their time. She silently hoped that those remaining would endure until everything was over. Notices the friendly gesture and acknowledges it with a similar response. Despite his efforts to appear calm, unease lingered in his expression, revealing that something was troubling him more than usual. He faced the colonel, wanting to understand the reason the colonel had declined to question him. Up to this point, no one had questioned Min about any of the oddities surrounding him. No one had brought up how he seemed to know about the colonel's failed strategies in every scenario, or why he stood apart as a special creature unlike the other zombies. The blonde brute realized that anyone in this situation would be eager to uncover the truth behind Min's mysterious nature. The colonel reacts by giving the boy a straightforward nod, making it clear that he is fully aware of the situation. Felt bewildered, while the colonel, in a moment of unexpected humor, claimed his extensive experience with manhwa had prepared him for situations like this, making the scene even funnier since he seemed to represent the audience themselves. Additionally, he showed little interest in the young man's past or the details of how his life had unfolded. Ultimately, the colonel's main goal was to support the people, guiding them to withstand and survive the relentless horrors of the apocalypse. A sincere, youthful grin spread across his face as he openly confessed that his sole concern was the welfare of others. They heard their leader respond with a reassuring and kind message. Min offered a warm smile, openly acknowledging that the core of the matter remained exactly as it always had. The Blue Hawk appeared startled, clearly unprepared for Min's unexpected remark. He chooses to stick to the basics, offering no additional details beyond his brief explanation. The Blue Hawk, feeling curious, turned to Miz and asked about something that had been on his mind. Remembering that had first intended to travel to, the colonel began to question why remained in this place. With his extraordinary powers, could have arrived at his destination long ago, so the colonel found it puzzling that he chose to stay. Explains that he has responsibilities to handle within the brigade, leaving the colonel taken aback by his admission. At last, the devoted father's features shift, revealing a look filled with sadness. He remembered each of the lives he had lived before. In each instance, whenever he attempted to speed things up, the result inevitably ended in catastrophe. After considering the clues, the colonel comes to understand that Min is genuinely concerned about its well-being. The colonel's accurate remark catches the blonde-haired father by surprise. The Blue Hawk delivers a powerful statement, expressing that nothing in the world is more defiant or intimately connected to a parent than their own child. Changing the subject, the boy glanced around the area, curiosity filling his eyes as he tried to spot Captain and questioned her sudden disappearance. Merely the mention of her name seemed to cast a peculiar enchantment over the colonel, compelling him to gulp down his drink with even greater intensity than before. He ordered additional drinks, hoping the alcohol would help him cope after hearing his daughter's name mentioned. Without warning, approached her father, letting him know how tired she felt and that she planned to head to bed early. He helped her with the care and dedication of a devoted father. Min rises from his seat, determined to accompany her home, even though she insists that it isn't necessary. The image of the father and his daughter gradually disappeared from view. The colonel found himself gazing at Min, whose face was lit up with an unusual warmth. It was uncommon to witness someone as fearsome as Min look so gentle, and it was all thanks to his daughter. In a sense, the colonel feels a deep sense of pride for him. He found especially fascinating, and reluctantly revealed his determination not to let the boy slip away so easily. Owing entirely to his efforts, the colonel was at last able to imagine a future in which he could develop his most ambitious strategy. A private entered the room where the colonel waited, and the colonel's mood brightened as he anticipated the possibility of being served additional drinks. Fear quickly took over, his expression shifting into one of pure dread. Upon noticing a soldier clutching his own neck, sweat poured down the man's face while his eyes widened with unmistakable fear, and he urgently relayed news of a serious issue. During this time, walked alongside his daughter, their steps matching as they moved together. Without warning, his gaze shifts toward her. She recalls what the colonel had said. Whenever he gazed at he was reminded of how much he cherished his daughter. She spoke, mentioning the girl's name directly. He catches his eye and makes up his mind to pose a question to her. Even with the incredible powers Min possessed, he found himself questioning whether his daughter secretly feared the person her father had turned into. Now he looks nothing like his former self, and any trace of who he once was has vanished. Even so, his cherished daughter never doubted him or turned him away, choosing instead to embrace him wholeheartedly without hesitation. At his most defenseless, the anxious father seeks reassurance, hoping to find out whether his daughter harbors a hidden fear of him. A cold shiver courses through his body as nods in agreement, her response making it clear that fear has taken hold of her. Min stood in stunned silence, unable to find any words, while his daughter revealed that she had been haunted every day by the fear that her father might someday kill her, just as he had done to so many others. She had reached a stage where keeping up the act had grown too overwhelming for her to handle. With tears flowing down her cheeks and her voice trembling as she searched for a response, she relentlessly demands to know the whereabouts of her true father, refusing to accept the heartless figure standing in front of her as family. Everyone could rest easy, as the terrifying vision was nothing more than a figment of Min's imagination. He jolted awake from his nightmare when his daughter, full of concern, came over to make sure he was all right. He wondered what was troubling his mind so much. Deciding to steer the conversation in a new direction, Min, filled with apprehension, chooses not to ask her the same question. Let out a frustrated cough, clearly affected by the worsening weather. The zombie father, worried about his daughter's health, insisted that she head indoors to keep warm, promising that he would fetch his medication himself. However, that sense of hope quickly disappears. The instant he detected a presence close by, he immediately moved to the window. Felt a wave of confusion wash over her, as her father used her full name for the first time. Without warning, the man erupted in rage, unleashing a powerful strike aimed directly at his own daughter. Caught off guard by his unexpected movement, terror flashes across his face. As the assault closed in on her, she let out a desperate scream, powerless to defend herself. It soon becomes clear that Min was never aiming for her at all. Rather, he stands there with his hand closed firmly, as though he has just seized something. Frustrated by her father's antics, demands an explanation for his ridiculous behavior. Min remains completely absorbed in examining the squashed, infected mosquito resting in his hand. He realizes that just seconds earlier, this tiny insect almost bit his daughter, putting her at risk of catching the virus. Min stands bewildered, unable to find an explanation, when an urgent code black announcement suddenly echoes around him. News of an intruder spread quickly through the base, signaling that everyone needed to evacuate without delay. The story now returns to the place where the Colonel event unfolded. He watches helplessly as one of his own soldiers falls victim to the viral infection right in front of him. The figure in front of him raised a monstrous face, a crazed and trembling grin twisting his features as he began to unleash destruction upon the brigade. They returned to a more detailed recounting of the exchange that took place between the Colonel and... He had given the new kind of zombie the name Eater. The memory of his first encounter lingered, mostly because of the creature's grotesque stomach. However, after coming across a spider previously, the Colonel found himself thinking that the Eater appeared rather attractive by comparison. Setting all humor aside, Min explained to him that the zombies were constantly changing and adapting. Within a brief period, their strength had increased significantly, making them far more daunting to confront. The danger they presented remained significant, and humanity's extinction was still a looming possibility rather than a concern that had been eliminated. That very idea lingered persistently in the Colonel's mind. A surge of fear rushed through him as the infected soldier suddenly charged in his direction. A broad, toothy smile stretched across his face. Acting swiftly, the Blue Hawk managed to seize him by the neck. He recalls that Min had emphasized his reasons for deciding to remain in this place. The commander standing nearby is known for being able to bench press an impressive 230 kilograms. With an almost superhuman strength, he could wipe out an entire battalion single-handedly. Serving as both the brigade's commander and its unstoppable force, he was known as Blue Hawk. While using his bare hands to pummel the zombie's face, with unwavering resolve etched across his features, the commander seizes the creature and tears its head from its body in one swift, forceful motion. Now that the survivor had just witnessed him slay a zombie, panic swept through the group as confusion mounted over how a zombie could have originated from inside the brigade itself. Aware of the impending danger, the commander instructs his troops to guide everyone back to their designated shelters for the time being. Observing the group's fear and hesitation, the colonel raises his voice, forcefully reminding everyone that taking action is their only chance to make it out alive. The soldiers immediately began their tasks, their actions swift and purposeful. The survivors returned to the safety of their refuge. At the same time, Ho seethed with anger over the virus's spread, feeling both irritation and disbelief that his once unbreakable stronghold had been breached. Without warning, his gaze quickly shifted to the festering wound, marring the zombie's neck. Just as the commander is about to make sense of the situation, a sudden scream catches his attention. It became clear that an increasing number of these grinning, unpleasant creatures were causing havoc throughout the camp. Acted swiftly, launching a powerful kick that struck one opponent directly in the face. The zombie was knocked to the ground. He reached for the most powerful wooden stick he could find, ready to unleash its destructive force. With a powerful strike, he delivered a fatal blow to the zombie's skull, instantly putting an end to the creature's existence. The colonel insisted that his soldiers waste no time in gathering his equipment and bringing Ryu to where they were right away. Upon receiving instructions from the Blue Hawks, the soldiers hurriedly sprang into action, moving as quickly as possible. At the same time, the man seethed with anger as he watched the zombies march boldly across his domain, feeling their presence was a direct insult to his reputation. They wielded the very same iconic stick that had been used earlier. He lashes out at them wildly, his movements frantic and uncontrolled. He made it clear to every insect around that this place belonged to him, and everyone understood that these grounds were under Ho's control. Throughout this, he continues to cut down another zombie with ease. A stick was lodged through the creature's head. Nearby, another one of the monsters attempted to sneak up on him from the side. The moment arrived, and they were immediately struck by a powerful swing, sending the ball soaring as if hit for a home run. The colonel begins to struggle with the rapid pace of his opponents, and finds himself almost overtaken. Just as the creature lunged at him from behind, he managed to respond quickly enough to defeat it. Found himself overwhelmed as an increasing number of zombies lunged at him, leaving him with no chance to rest. Overwhelmed by anger, he let out a thunderous roar. He faced them, preparing for his final confrontation. The viewpoint shifts to focus on the survivors as they are moved toward their designated shelters. Within the confines of the shelter, the scene unfolded. Min insisted that his daughter put on the construction helmet, firmly stressing that she must keep it on under any circumstances. He had placed protective goggles and a mask over her face, causing her to wonder why he seemed especially concerned about her safety now. Decided to confront the obvious question on everyone's mind, wondering aloud what kind of zombie threat they were facing on this occasion. The narration introduced the creature as, revealing it to be a zombie that resembled a mosquito. The narrator couldn't help but admit that was an incredibly adorable name. The danger was easy to grasp. A single bite would be enough to turn a person into a zombie, although the time it took for the transformation varied from one individual to another. Min found himself troubled by how things had turned out, since he never anticipated such a bleak result. Throughout his many lives, he had come across the type just once, which added to his uncertainty. This time, he approached the situation without any prior experience to rely on. Yet, for someone burning with anger and driven by the fierce desire to shield his daughter, experience hardly mattered. As he stood outside grappling with his own thoughts, the look of frustration on his face caused to feel concerned. Min's mind raced with fears of a future in which his daughter had vanished from his life. Although he was aware that they would soon invade in great numbers, he understood that their central force remained concealed in another location. The topic shifted to the infamous zombie mosquito. Word of the situation eventually made its way to Captain, who found himself utterly confused by the unfolding events. The informant relays that the zombie specialist has advised everyone to dress in full-coverage clothing as a precaution. Hearing the name leaves Harry feeling stunned and disoriented. She started to remember seeing her father talking to him in a relaxed manner. The recollection clearly irritates her, although she tries not to show it. Rather than allowing her team to be idle, she directed them to dress appropriately and follow her guidance to keep the zombies under control. At last, she seeks out details about where her father is specifically located. The soldier gives a hesitant reply. Without warning, a member of her team called out to the captain from atop the wall. Someone let know that a zombie was hiding just beyond the brigade's perimeter. She couldn't help but feel offended that their attention was fixed on just one zombie outside, when total disorder had already broken out within the brigade itself. The soldier explains that the unusual look of this zombie catches eye and draws her attention. Doing his utmost to recall the zombie's features, the young man glanced back once more, carefully examining its appearance. Far away, he notices a toad covered in thick hair. A twisted smile spread across the character's face, giving them an unsettling and unnatural appearance. The creature thrived on the downfall of humanity. The monstrous being's horrific jaws stretched wide, forming an unusually tall, gaping column. Hundreds of mosquitoes burst forth, swarming into the air. It seemed to serve as an incubator designed specifically for them. The soldier, gripped by fear, urgently explained to the captain that a horde of mosquitoes had poured out from the zombie's mouth. Unable to grasp what was happening quickly enough, observes as a swarm of mosquitoes ascends above the wall. The unfortunate man nearest to them lets out a terrified scream, unable to do anything but react in fear. The captain gave a firm command, instructing everyone to retreat inside the buildings. All at once, she becomes aware. A person drifted gracefully through the air, resembling a fairy. This airborne figure was no superhero, but rather their well-known authority on zombies. The captain, unable to find the right words, wonders silently about the mysterious man's actions. A few scenes earlier, events unfolded at the shelter zone as the colonel's men arrived in search of Min. He had flatly declined to work with them, his concern for his daughter's well-being overriding any sense of duty. Instead, he criticized the soldiers, accusing them of expecting an ordinary citizen to risk everything on their behalf. The anxious father, struggling to remain calm, firmly states his stance one last time, making it clear that he refuses to repeat himself or change his mind. His daughter then chose to set her construction hat gently atop his head. Min stood in stunned silence, unable to comprehend this abrupt behavior. His daughter insisted that she was far too feeble to even attempt confronting a zombie mosquito. Deep down, she desperately hoped the others in the shelter would survive, even though she had no power to help them. She gazed down at her own hand, noticing how it shook uncontrollably. Min notices his daughter's eyes filled with tears, pleading silently for him to do something. She desperately hopes he will find a way to rescue everyone. He had traveled this far because of that very reason. The man sets his flamethrower down on the ground. He directs his massive pipe toward his opponents in a threatening gesture, leaving everyone confused by the unexpected move. Inspired by his daughter's encouragement, Min becomes even more determined to safeguard those around him. The extermination mission commenced, relying on one clear strategy. A command was given to set all things ablaze in the fires of the underworld. Squeeze the trigger, signaling the start of an all-out war against the swarm. The flamethrower unleashed its fury, wiping out the mosquitoes in a fiery onslaught. The unattractive toad was left behind, forced to watch the scene unfold. The project was being destroyed in a fiery disaster. Min's face displayed a look of deep satisfaction, pleased to witness the creature's futile attempts lead to nothing. The toad makes up its mind to take action, and manages to achieve what seemed unattainable by. Soaring high above the raging blaze, the figure launched into the air with an immense leap. Min's demand to end things immediately had clearly angered their friend. The character made up their mind to run after the zombie. The young man vaulted over the wall in a powerful, soaring jump. He lands securely within the confines of his vehicle. The captain, realizing the creature was behind the swarm of mosquitoes, quickly set off to chase it down. She would never be able to pardon the traitor who ran away, abandoning their brigade in devastation. With a hint of sarcasm, he internally concluded that Min must possess some extraordinary, almost divine, understanding stored in his mind to be able to figure out how to defeat the zombie. After a brief silence, the boy silently acknowledges that she is right. The captain's face lit up with satisfaction at the confirmation, and proceeded to explain that their immediate priority was to take down the target. Immediately after, she planned to confront him herself, armed with a barrage of questions she was eager to ask, determined to address his irritating behavior head-on. If he decided to deceive her directly once more this time, she was determined to scold him harshly and refused to let him leave her side. The mother was clearly angry, her frustration fueled by the father's ongoing manipulation. The villain presses down on the accelerator while glancing over their shoulder. The group hurried out of the brigade, relentlessly pursuing their target into the open. The untamed woods stretched out before them. In the following scene, the zombie toad made its way back to its cave. The creature, known as Slider, was identified as an elite-class zombie, distinguished by its ability to create copies of itself and multiply whenever it wished. Indeed, the term duplication was accurate, for at that moment, the hideous toad began to bellow at the top of its lungs, calling out to gather every one of its species. The sound of creaking drew the people's attention. An enormous creature loomed before them, its 5 colossal eyes staring menacingly. The massive ogre, with 5 glaring eyes, emerges from the shadows, exuding a chilling excitement reminiscent of a creature from the darkest nightmares. The Slider acted as a host-type zombie, cleverly defending its core by hiding within the darkness. Tracking it proved to be a challenging ordeal. Despite that, the creature remained truly horrifying, possessing knowledge of all things thanks to its loyal followers. Meanwhile, the toad continued its lively dance. Suddenly appears and forcefully slams the creature's head into the ground. The character found themselves locking eyes with the unsettling, distorted stare of the Slider. His ambush tactic had proven effective, leading him to a successful outcome. The zombie expert pressed firmly against the creature's neck, applying steady pressure. The creature released one last surge of mosquitoes, which burst from its mouth in a bubbling swarm. The cluster gathered tightly into one powerful surge, just before colliding with a pair. Complete destruction was caused by the intense heat radiated from his flamethrower. Just before their arrival at the Slider's hideout, the group had gone over this impressive plan. Had only recently discovered that the people in her were still alive. Everyone at the brigade remained unharmed after the swarm was defeated, which meant that would also be safe with them. The greatest strength of the brigade was its ability to recover quickly, no matter how chaotic things became. Such resilience did not arise by chance. Instead, it stemmed from outstanding guidance and strong leadership. The unit operated under the leadership of the most distinguished colonel in the world. The primary motivation behind Min's visit to base stemmed from a deep sense of necessity. Upon arrival, he expressed his gratitude to the captain, acknowledging how the captain's demeanor had helped calm his nerves. However, beneath this display of appreciation, a different truth lingered within him. He believed that his actions paled in comparison to everything he had accomplished by rescuing everyone. The soldiers were only able to imitate Min's method because he had immediately demonstrated the most effective way to wipe out the swarm. Over the transmission, she could only make out admiration for the zombie specialist who had guided them to victory. Just as she prepared to ask him another question, the man known for his zombie expertise redirected her attention back to their primary objective. They observed as the host toad relayed messages back to the main creature. Min hesitated to eliminate the toad right away, knowing that if the main body managed to get away, the brigade would be put at risk once more. The two of them turned their attention to the mission ahead, with assigned the straightforward duty of eliminating any creature that appeared. The creature was given no opportunity to regain its strength. Simultaneously, made it clear that, despite taking all those steps, the attack lacked the power necessary to defeat the elite-level zombie. The most remarkable power this unsettling zombie has is its relentless capacity to multiply endlessly. This ability allowed it to create endless zombies from nothing, causing their numbers to grow without limit. The creature possessed the ability to call forth so many of its kind that counting them became an impossible task. At this moment, every single one fixed their unsettling gazes on, clearly preparing to feast on their next victim. The host bodies operated much like an interconnected network, with each one deeply connected to the others. This connection ensured that even if the main body was destroyed, the host would quickly recover as long as any of its offspring remained alive. Felt a wave of nausea just thinking about how they would confront the approaching zombie. She sincerely wishes the boy possesses a secret tactic that could counter this overwhelmingly strong power. Min responded with a quiet nod, choosing to express his agreement without words. This moment brought everyone's attention to the highlight of the day. The boy swung his arm forcefully and drove it down into the ground. The tunnel was destroyed, causing it to cave in right away. Outside, the captain finds himself unable to help due to the blockade blocking his way. Inside the building, found himself surrounded by a horde of spawns and confronted by a powerful elite zombie. Before entering the building, he informed the captain that the sole method to halt the spread was to seal the area and continue destroying it relentlessly, until every last creature was eliminated. This moment marked the start of his most ambitious plan. The goal was to eliminate every living thing found within the tunnel. Even though Min faces overwhelming numbers, he remains confident that luck is on his side. He truly believes that by ending the lives of these villains here, they will at last come to understand the full force of his fury. He hurled himself recklessly into the chaos, transforming into a frenzy of attacks aimed straight at the monster's core. Stood outside the cave, unable to see what was happening inside. All she could make out were the muffled sounds of something heavy crashing against the cave walls. She stands speechless, unable to comprehend the cruel behavior displayed by Min. The captain's mind wandered back to a heated exchange she once had with the colonel. Frustration had welled up inside her as she struggled to accept the orders demanding her team's unwavering support for Min. The commander made it clear that this individual held a position beyond that of an ordinary brigade member. The fate of humanity's continued existence depended on it. At that moment, couldn't help but notice how those things he had once said seemed more accurate than ever, even though irritation simmered within her. Without warning, a sharp buzz from the transmission alerted the captain to an unexpected message. Shock washed over her face, her features falling as she processed the unexpected announcement. For the time being, the details remain unclear. As the sun rises, a new day begins. The blockade remained firm and unwavering. Min's arm, smeared with blood, suddenly shot out from inside. He dedicated 18 hours, 26 minutes, and 34 seconds to completely tearing down the relentless spree. He prepared himself to reveal how many zombies he had defeated. Out of a staggering 7 million, a total of 127,000 were counted. Every life had been lost because of a single person. Min's body showed signs of severe injury. He made a relaxed adjustment. He shifted his arms and legs until they were aligned correctly again, restoring it to its original state. His face remained steady, showing no sign of surprise or discomfort. Humanity's most powerful weapon accomplished the Black Code mission with an astonishing level of precision that seemed beyond human ability. Returning to the brigade's location, it became clear that had hurried back as soon as she heard the news. The scene suggests that the colonel ultimately lost his life. It only appeared that way at first, but in the following instant everything changed. A confident man casually ate chips, acting as if nothing out of the ordinary had just occurred. He mocked his daughter, ridiculing her for behaving as if she had encountered a ghost. Felt a surge of anger after overhearing the urgent news about the colonel's peril, prompting her immediate return so she could help him. Caught off guard, the Blue Hawk bursts into laughter right in front of her, so amused by her response that tears begin to form in his eyes. Just the day before, he had witnessed his daughter's anger erupt after he dismissed every point she tried to make. Without warning, the daughter who had been furious moments ago returned, her anger replaced by concern that her father, whom she always believed to be unbeatable, could have been injured. The colonel found the situation entertaining, while fumed quietly behind them. She discovers that the commander managed to eliminate every zombie in the plaza by himself, accomplishing the feat without needing any equipment. Because of his brave deeds, the zombies could no longer infect others, ensuring that everyone left remained out of danger. Displaying a hint of pride, the colonel pointed out that he had also suffered minor bruises, though they were nothing serious. Feeling irritated, Harry spun on his heel and silently judged her decision to hurry back as foolish. The colonel, maintaining his authority, warned her sternly to watch her words since she remained beneath him in rank. Changing the subject, he inquired about her current situation. No one could understand why she had come back by herself, especially since Min had gone with her on the mission. The colonel wanted to know whether they had succeeded in overcoming the main zombie, so he raised the crucial question. After pausing quietly for a brief moment, Gary recalls the remarks the colonel made a few days earlier, emphasizing their significance in his mind. Represented humanity's last chance, and their answer to the devastation of the apocalypse. At last, the captain began to understand things from his point of view. The next morning, the boy makes his way back to the base appeared almost divine as he entered, and the members greeted him with eager enthusiasm. At last, finally gave him a nod of recognition. By the time the clock struck noon, what made the situation truly amusing was revealed. The villain spent time rehearsing her pickup lines, trying to appear just like any other girl. She hoped to strike up a laid-back chat with Min and reconnect with him. Lacking the patience to handle anything overly adorable, she eventually lost her temper and exploded with anger. As she tried to compose herself despite her obvious embarrassment, the passing soldiers silently watched her, taking in the situation without a word. No one around her understood the reason, stood alone, deep in contemplation, remained oblivious to their presence as she quietly considered her next move. She wondered whether trying to catch up with him was worthwhile, yet she dreaded the thought of embarrassing herself. The captain realizes that offering this gesture is the sole way she can express her gratitude for everything Min has done. A gentle smile crossed her face as she admitted that Min was the real hero who had rescued them all. Without warning, she spotted him engaged in conversation with her father. Curiosity filled the air as someone tried to figure out the topic of their conversation. Realizing this moment offered her the greatest chance to rejoin the group, Harry made her way to the far end, figuring it would feel less uncomfortable to join in where others were already talking. However, just as she prepares to walk over to them, she overhears the colonel reacting with astonishment to Min's outrageous statements. The zombie expert firmly insists that his previous statements were sincere, making it clear that their time with the brigade has come to an end. He planned to depart with before the night was over. In the end, the commander found it hard to come to terms with this. The colonel realizes the man is determined to go to Dijon, and unable to prevent him, urges him to think carefully about his decision. Given the chance that another high-ranking zombie shows up, it would mean the complete destruction of their entire brigade in an instant. Even, who was usually fearless, felt a deep anxiety about what might happen and pleaded with Min to remain by their side, until the group could manage on their own. Despite the boy's desperate pleas, his worried father responded with a cold intensity, questioning whether there was any reason for him to remain. He felt no obligation to act for the brigade's protection or to guarantee anyone's survival. Harry's eyes widened in disbelief as he realized the man had no plans to save anyone, the chilling tone of his words making the truth unmistakably clear. Her frustration boils over until she steps out of hiding, catching both of them off guard with her sudden appearance. Seething with rage, the captain wonders inwardly whether those words are spoken sincerely. Min confidently faces her and expresses full agreement with his previous statements, showing no hesitation. Ultimately, what held the greatest importance in his life was his daughter. He felt indifferent toward the members of the brigade. He openly confessed this without any hesitation, looking them right in the eye. Frustrated, the captain spun on his heel and quickly made his way out. The painful truth was that Min was deliberately acting as distant and unkind as possible, hoping to shatter the image had of him. With each reincarnation in which he chose the path, a clear pattern revealed itself. The captain inevitably grew captivated by him. However, in this lifetime, he had taken steps to guarantee that viewed him solely as a frightening creature, nothing more. His plan works just as he intended. She felt a strong sense of disgust toward him. Additionally, the boy noticed her watching their exchange and seized the moment to deliver some cutting remarks, effectively destroying any chance of feelings ever forming between them. Min believed this was the sole method he understood to protect her, and despite the truth he had just revealed, he found a sense of calm settling over him. She seemed to understand his thoughts perfectly, as though his mind were an open book to her. The colonel cautioned Min, explaining that rejecting too harshly might lead to dangerous consequences. He also points out to the boy that, no matter what Min believes, even a city-like stands little chance in the harsh and unforgiving world they all inhabit. In truth, the colonel believes their efforts would be best focused on transforming this brigade, molding it into the most powerful sanctuary for mankind. The boy feels an undeniable pull toward the offer, captivated by the allure of the other's words. Both of them possess abilities beyond ordinary humans, making them a formidable pair. In the end, however, the harsh truth about time continued to weigh heavily on him. Min knew he couldn't let any more time slip away, since in every one of his previous lives, the powerful zombie slider had always shown up a decade after the world ended. In just 10 days, it had already come, showing how quickly and dangerously this situation was unfolding. The increasing appearance of high-ranking zombies signaled an impending threat, one that would cause the brigade to fall apart before it could ever solidify its defenses. He was referring to actual zombies on the Titanic, not just a metaphor. Reconsidered the choice he had made. He announced again his intention to depart from the brigade before the night ended, planning to make his way to Dijon. As darkness settled, the setting shifted to a devastated city landscape. A zombie appeared, its body covered in sharp, protruding teeth and dotted with countless eyes. The creature appeared to be yet another version of a formidable Slider-class monster. The creature releases waves of pulsating offspring, each one intent on destroying the humans who dare to come near. With unwavering confidence, guided his reliable road roller straight toward the creature, ready to face it head-on. At the same time, the main body let out a piercing scream, overwhelmed by agony. They returned to the last moments of his exchange with the colonel. Although he was prepared to depart for Dijon, his eagerness only served to irritate the commander. He had come up with an alternative suggestion for the other person to consider. The proposal brought everything to where things stood now. The boy was not by himself. Powerful tanks and armored vehicles stood beside him, offering their support. The tanks began firing relentlessly, clearing obstacles to simplify the task ahead. Effortlessly, they eliminated the nearby spawns one after another. Min managed to spark the commander's interest, urging that they should witness firsthand whether the idea of a flawless shelter could actually exist. Beams with joy, thoroughly enjoying himself as he looks at Min. Zombie Daddy, however, couldn't help but feel a sense of worry. He cared solely about his daughter, who had been revealed. The same gesture was demonstrated. The journey to uncover the shelter commenced, with Min taking the lead at the forefront of the group. The fate of all humanity depended on the success of this mission. The weather raged with a fierce storm that day. Without warning, an enormous creature rose from the depths, its massive frame and gaping maw making the nearby suspension bridge appear tiny in comparison. The enormous size of the creature makes it difficult to handle. The creature before them was known as a viscus, a type of elite zombie. The giant slug stood out for its ability to secrete poison from every inch of its body. Even the smallest touch against its body can be deadly. The colonel turned to the young man, seeking his ideas since this bridge was their sole route to Dijon. Min pointed out that the creature usually became active at night. It turned out that UV light was a vulnerability for the zombie. When exposed to it, the creature's skin would become tougher, and its movements would slow down considerably. At that critical moment, they aim for the zombie's head, severing the spikes that protrude from its skull and ultimately bringing about its death. Due to the intense storm, the group was forced to wait for 2 hours before sunlight would break through the clouds. During this time, the colonel discovered that no other zombies were nearby. He focused all his attention on getting his armor ready. At the same time, a soldier begins to feel uneasy, viewing with increasing suspicion. No reasonable explanation could account for how much he knew about the zombies. Despite his expertise, he carried himself with the confidence of someone who had already survived the end of the world. Their highly respected commander was also seeking out his expertise. Unaware that the GigaChat stood just behind him, the man loudly hurled insults at the commander. The nerd stood nearby, lost in thought as he formulated theories, while the Blue Hawk leaned in close, bringing his face down to the much shorter person's level. After that moment, the air was filled solely with the sound of the young man's terrified screams. The colonel continued to intimidate him, reacting harshly to the remarks he had made. His daughter, on the other hand, after spending so much time sitting, she started dealing with several back issues. Couldn't help but feel genuinely concerned about how much her butt was suffering because of it. As her father quietly approached, he startled her with a sudden scare. In a sudden rush of fear, she let the umbrella slip from her grasp. She yells at him, upset that he startled her so suddenly. Zombie Papa arrived with a selection of snacks for her. Confided that his changed appearance was something she still hadn't adjusted to. Feeling anxious, he expresses regret to her that his appearance no longer matches that of her real father. Upon hearing those words, the daughter remains silent, standing still in place. Suddenly becomes visibly uncomfortable. He reflects on how much he has transformed, wondering if his daughter might not even recognize him as her father now. He stood outside, muttering nonsense and even directing harsh words at himself within his thoughts. Beneath the surface, Min struggled with a persistent question that haunted him, one he dreaded above all others. Throughout everything, he remained puzzled by her willingness to embrace him as her father, despite the terrifying transformation he had. He indicated his eyes with a gesture. Remarked to her father that his eyes had not changed over time. Min found the suggestion strange, unable to understand her point since his eyes were already red. While she nibbled on her snack, she recalled the day her mother walked out on them. At the age of 7, she held her father's hand with a firm grip, seeking comfort and security. Despite everything, she recalled that Min had possessed the same kind and giving eyes. Her eyes forever regarded the girl with a mixture of sympathy and naivety. It seemed as though they constantly struggled beneath the heavy burden of never measuring up. Whenever her gaze met his, a wave of anger surged within her. Deep down, she knew that Min was actually the one to be most. Her dearly cherished father. Just 14 days earlier, a zombie apocalypse had erupted right outside her home, as if the gates of hell had opened. At that time, someone she had never met before walked into her home, their bodies stained with blood. In the beginning, fear overwhelmed her. However, her gaze once more landed on those sorrowful eyes. The same soft gaze seemed to welcome her, making her feel as though she was the only one in the world. To him, nothing in the world felt gentler or more comforting. As the sun began to rise, a new day started. Zombie Loch Ness's skin in this area appeared tough and rigid, almost as firm as wood in the early morning. The colonel takes control of the situation and orders his troops to open fire. The characters began to release a barrage of intense weaponry. The creature's flesh was torn apart by a powerful force. The toxic slug let out a shrill cry, writhing in pain. Unaware, he fails to see the boy springing up from the edge. Drawing inspiration from Levi, Min skillfully wields a pair of axes. With a single devastating blow, the creature's head is split apart, exploding into 2 gruesome halves. His incredible display of strength astonished everyone, leaving his critics speechless and unable to respond. The colonel eventually realizes why the soldier is wary of the zombie expert. Despite everything, The act he had just demonstrated in front of everyone could only be described as miraculous. The lifeless body of the gigantic slug. The creature plunged into the water, sending up a loud splash as its life came to an end. The boy stood at the very top. Once considered humanity's last hope, this individual now stood as mankind's most powerful weapon in the fight against the apocalypse. The Blue Hawk loudly insisted that there was no other option available to them. The setting brings back memories for Min, making him recall his 99th journey through the apocalypse. In the past, it had taken him an astonishing 378 days, slightly more than a year, to finally arrive in Dijon. However, as he experiences his present life, within just 14 days after the outbreak began, he and his companions arrived to confront Dijon. After what felt like an eternity, after weathering all kinds of hardships, after enduring many challenges, and his companions finally arrived in. They needed to journey back to the third day of the outbreak. Across neighborhoods, zombies had already started leaving a trail of devastation. Despite their presence, an efficient special unit swiftly eliminated them. After managing to secure the defense line, the operations commander expressed joy and relief at their successful efforts. Meanwhile, they discovered that the scattered groups in other cities had not managed to stop the apocalypse, and as a result, had been completely destroyed. Dijon alone managed to survive the devastation that destroyed every other city. To their astonishment, the group soon found themselves out of touch with their units after receiving the last command. The commander struck the desk with a clenched fist, his irritation growing as he understood that the situation had deteriorated further. He understood that the zombie virus was spreading at an alarming speed. Confronted with a catastrophe of this magnitude, survival was impossible for them, especially since all the other cities had already fallen. Some might declare that this marked the downfall of South Korea. Despite everything, the commander discovers, they placed their faith in its ability to succeed. Against all odds, they not only endured the ordeal but also held firm in their defense. These brave individuals belonged to the group known as the Blue Hawk Union. Team leader Alpha reached out to the commander, seeking permission to move forward with a plan to expand their operation. The commander paused, uncertainty evident in his stance. Prior to granting authorization for the current mission, Alpha received clear orders to see the mission through to the end, and the team leader carried out those directives without hesitation. During these challenging times, was the sole individual everyone could depend on. Dijon believed that enduring the horrors of the apocalypse would guarantee his survival. Suddenly, fear flashed across the team leader's face as their eyes grew wide. He noticed an object hovering near the peak of the tower. The being stood apart from all others, its form chiseled like a statue, yet its visage twisted into something out of a nightmare. Fiery red eyes glowered menacingly at the people below. The scene shifts to the present, where the hero's response is about to unfold before the audience. The colonel stared in disbelief, unable to comprehend the scene before him. He could hardly believe that this place, which the zombie specialist had relied on as humanity's last hope, was real. There was no reason for concern. The scene offered no sudden frights. In fact, Dijon appeared healthier and more vibrant than ever before. At last, the colonel realized why the young man had been so eager to talk about traveling to Dijon. It turned out to be the most promising land they had discovered. The soldiers could hardly believe their eyes as the city stood firm against all odds, presenting a remarkable scene. At the same time, glanced at her father, acknowledging that his guess about Dijon had been right. At that moment, she notices the simmering rage on Min's face. Despite the occasion meant for celebration, tension fills the air. He was furious, leaving his daughter confused about the reason behind his anger. The boy instinctively felt that something was wrong with the place, sensing trouble even from a great distance. He realized there were hidden events unfolding behind the scenes that no one had noticed yet. Initially, it should be recognized that the apocalypse caused the downfall of every city throughout Korea. Is one of the cities that are part of the group. Afterward, the city launched a counterattack, breaking through the defense lines and regaining command over its territory. As the boy arrived in the city during his 99th life, he found that just a few districts were under control, and much remained to be accomplished. Surprisingly, the area remained completely undisturbed, as if no harm had ever come to it. Even more astonishing, it now sparkled with stronger protective measures than before. The transformation was so dramatic that it seemed impossible for it to have occurred in just 2 weeks. Min couldn't shake the uneasy feeling growing inside him. A heavy sense of dread weighed on him, dragging his thoughts toward hopelessness. The instincts he had honed through countless lifetimes now blared warnings in his mind, alerting him that something was terribly amiss. He pulled himself out of his deep thoughts. Min called out too, instructing his daughter to remain by his side no matter what. The unexpected command unsettled her, a shiver running through her as she sensed her father's fear but couldn't understand what had caused it. The colonel hurriedly urged his troops to prepare themselves, knowing that every moment counted and no more time could be lost. He could hardly contain his eagerness to enter the city. Without warning, a soldier caught his eye, raising a legitimate issue that needed to be reported. The tablet was held up so the colonel could see it. He explains to that there is an unusual circumstance. When they had traveled through the region, their journey had taken them across an expansive open plain. At that moment, his gaze shifted to the airplanes, where he noticed an unusual sight. Gigantic lines stretched and overlapped across the surface, appearing as though an unseen hand had carefully sketched them. The colonel found himself puzzled by an unusual report. Enormous lines stretched across the ground, their sheer size making them impossible for anyone to fully comprehend just by looking. To be cautious, he decided to launch a drone skyward to get a better view. The recording that came back causes concern. Blue Hawk stared in confusion at the enormous illustration, trying to understand why it was there. Overcome with panic, forcefully pushes the other person away and snatches the tablet, his actions fueled by mounting frustration. He snatched it away with little regard, leaving the colonel visibly irritated by the abrupt intrusion. The boy pauses to carefully observe what's in front of him. His realization of the situation fills him with a fury greater than he has ever felt before. At the Expo Tower Inn, everything seemed to be untouched and in perfect condition. A man with his eyes covered came back to announce that 10 unknown people had shown up. A reconnaissance team had already been dispatched to investigate the situation. Concealed in the shadows of their office, the mysterious leader instructed him to retrieve the others unharmed. Min's eyes wander over the massive illustration before him. The image depicted a celestial figure that resembled a deity. Back then, the boy couldn't understand the reason behind his intense unease, but at last, the answer had become clear to him. Within the protective embrace of Dijon, at the place he longed to reach, a being awaited, one that held the fate of his existence. Anticipation built as a massive wave, prepared to crash down. 2 weeks earlier, many individuals experienced the heartbreak of losing those dearest to them, and in time, every trace of hope crumbled completely. There was no hope of rescue for them. The city's mayor positioned himself at the summit of the Expo Tower. A figure introduced himself with the name. The man removed the structure from the top. He finished with a flawless landing, just like a superhero would. The people felt a renewed sense of happiness and optimism when he appeared. Du emerged as their emblem, known for his enigmatic presence and the blindfold that concealed his eyes. The man informed them about the troubling situation they were facing. He conveyed the grim message about humanity's collapse. Simultaneously, he felt a surge of relief and joy that both Dijon and its residents had managed to endure. The audience erupted with excitement, their cheers filling the air. After regaining his composure, turned to the gathered crowd and emphasized that their continued existence was not a matter of luck or mere coincidence. He described them as extraordinary individuals, not defined by their limitations, but as unique people destined to reignite the spirit of humanity. The citizens, treating the mayor with reverence usually reserved for deities, wept in appreciation, fully aware that their continued existence was owed to his actions. In response, the mayor offered them one last proclamation to ease their concerns. He was determined to ensure that the spirit of Dijon would continue to burn brightly. He promised to keep everyone safe. He remained devoted to the city right up to the last moment. As he addressed the people, his words stirred their hearts and energized the entire crowd. Min and his friends froze, unable to hide their surprise. The colonel found himself uncertain whether this version of matched the one Min had imagined. The specialist in zombies firmly rejects the idea. He reflected on how he had never witnessed anyone being revered in such a manner before. The true nature of this man remained shrouded in secrecy. Not even their trusted informant had managed to uncover any details about this mysterious person. During his past existence, Dijon's greatest military strength had been the Blue Hawk Division. They found themselves lingering in place, no longer commanding attention, blending in with the crowd as if they were insignificant. Although the room was filled with people, the absence of one crucial individual stood out above all others. The man stood as the head of Alpha Unit. Wu, who was also recognized as the hero, had recently experienced a whirlwind of events in just a brief period. A single variable ended up changing the city's fate forever. Was proving to be an enigma, another unpredictable factor that demanded careful investigation. The mayor addressed the townspeople once again, proclaiming a day of festivity. The community gathered in honor of the goddess, who had bestowed new allies to aid in protecting their city. As the newcomers boarded, the man gestured towards group, his expression filled with admiration and respect. Without warning, a grenade landed mere inches from his face. A thick cloud of smoke burst outward as the grenade exploded. Min and his companions began to cough uncontrollably, as Colonel Peng Ho instructed them to shield their mouths and crouch down quickly. The father glanced over at his daughter, concern etched on his face as he wondered if she had been impacted. Relief washed over him when he saw that she was perfectly okay. The appearance of the smoke grenade caught the boy completely off guard, adding a surprising twist he hadn't anticipated. He quickly scans the area, his eyes searching for any sign of the suspect. Without warning, Mint's gaze lands on a shocking sight. The mayor, dressed in a suit, is overcome by violent coughing, clearly dying before Mint's eyes. Smoke fills the air around him, leaving the mayor powerless and unable to save himself from his fate. A masked soldier stood behind him, poised to fire a shot at his head at any moment. The man standing before them is the group's leader. Du realizes a gun is pointed at his head. In the end, someone squeezes the trigger, resulting in the man's execution in full view of the gathered crowd. The citizens are forced to watch in terror as a life is violently taken before them. Du's lifeless body collapses onto the cold ground, a chilling silence settling over the scene. The soldier from the Blue Hawk unit swiftly restrained Wu, accusing him of betraying their cause. They find it hard to accept that the person to blame is right in front of them. The responsibility rests solely on the team leader's shoulders. Min observes the situation and realizes it himself. He was shocked to find like that. With only limited options, he did whatever he could to help. Wu pleaded with the townspeople, encouraging them to shake off the enchantment that clouded their minds and regain their awareness. He pleads with them to break free from the deception and see reality. From the start, had been misleading everyone. At that moment, Du, who appeared to have died, suddenly comes back to life. Despite the gunshot wound to his head, he now sits upright, defying expectations. It seemed as though everything remained completely unchanged. The people placed absolute faith in him, their belief so intense that they viewed his actions as the work of a higher power. Their fervor reached such extremes that they publicly demanded Wu's death. Shackles confined completely, leaving him at the mercy of a crowd that called out for his swift execution. Speaking to the gathered crowd, consumed by madness, skillfully twists the trust others have placed in him. The panel reveals that they claim responsibility for bringing him back to life, following his brush with death. He refers to them as the residents of the City of Miracles. They offered small gestures of loyalty, keeping their followers just satisfied enough to stay devoted. The people held a deep conviction that the goddess was real. Support from was strengthening their efforts. Boldly announces the beginning of a new era. the light that could never be extinguished. He and the misguided townspeople burst into wild, ecstatic celebration. As the events played out, the heroes observed everything that happened. Min gradually came to understand that the City of Miracles was built on deception.